right, good evening. If you'll please take your seats. Welcome this evening to the May 15th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Meeting. I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I'll be serving as the Zoning Hearing Master this evening, except for a couple of cases. And we have also Zoning Hearing Master Susan Finch, who will be hearing 2 cases this evening. So if you have any items on you that make noise, cell phones, computers, or anything, would you please silence those at this time? And then if you would please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And again, welcome to the May 15th Zoning Hearing Master Meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Mr. Brian Grady of the Hillsborough County Development Services Department. Mr. Grady will introduce staff and any agenda changes, withdrawals, or continuances today.
Madam Hearing Officer, again, Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. Michelle Heinrich with staff will go through the changes to the agenda and introduce staff. Thank you.
Good evening. Before we begin, we also have with us, as you heard, Brian Grady with Development Services, Cameron Clark with the County Attorney's Office, and Carla Lanos with the Planning Commission. And I will start off by going over one of the changes to tonight's agenda, and that is agenda page 7, item D3, which is PD rezoning 22-1390. Staff is requesting a continuance of this item to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing.
All right, thank you. Do we need to hear from the applicant on this, or the public, or? Okay. Is the applicant here? All right. So this is a staff requested continuance.
It is, ma'am.
All right. So this is item rezoning PD 22-1390. It's agenda item D3. And this item is continued to the June 20th, 2023 Zoning Hearing Master Meeting.
Thank you. I'll now go through the published withdrawals and continuances, starting with item A1, PD 22-0648. This application is being continued by the applicant to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A2, Major Mod Application 22-0671. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A3, PD 22-0877. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A4, Major Mod 22-1239. This application is being withdrawn by the zoning administrator in accordance with LDC section 10.03.02.C2. Item A5, PD 22-1257. This application is being withdrawn by the zoning administrator in accordance with LDC section 10.03.02.C.2. Item A6, PD 22-1330. This application is being withdrawn from the ZHM process. Item A7, PD 22-1503. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A8, Major Mod Application 22-1510. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A9, PD Application 22-1577. This application is being continued by the applicant to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A10, Major Mod 22-1637. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A11, Major Mod Application 22-1638. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A12, Major Mod Application 22-1639. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A13, 22-1647. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A14, Standard Rezoning 22-1654. This application has been withdrawn from the ZHM process. Item A15, PD Application 22-1688. This application is being continued by the applicant to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A16, PD Application 22-1701. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A17, PD Application 22-1706. This application is being withdrawn from the ZHM process. Item A18, this application, or PD Application 22-0041. This application is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, correction. For item A18, that's for PD Application 23-0041. And again, it is being continued by staff to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A19, PD Application 23-0059. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the June 20th, 2023 ZHM hearing. Item A20, PD Application 23-0109. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the July 24th, 2023 ZHM hearing. And lastly, item A21, PD Application 23-0153. This application is being continued by the applicant to the August 21st, 2023 ZHM hearing, and that concludes the published withdrawals and continuances.
All right, thank you very much. So before we go forward then, I will just read into the records what the meeting procedures will be tonight. The agenda tonight consists of items that require a public hearing by a hearing master before going before the Board of County Commissioners for a final decision. I will conduct a hearing on each item and will submit a written recommendation. My written recommendation will be filed with the clerk of the board within 15 working days after the conclusion of today's public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will consider the record of today's public hearing and my recommendation and will make the final decision on the application at a publicly noticed meeting on a date and time set by the Board of County Commissioners. The hearings today will be informal. I will ask questions related to the scope of direct testimony and may call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate. I will decide all questions of procedure. I will take evidence, but will exclude evidence that is irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious. Evidence may be presented in written form, and all testimony shall be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used to supplement or explain other evidence, but shall not be sufficient alone to support a finding of fact, unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil court action. The order of presentation tonight will be as follows. First, county staff will introduce each item. Then the applicant and the applicant's witnesses will have 15 minutes to present the proposal. County Development Services will have 5 minutes to present its findings and recommendation. The Planning Commission will have 5 minutes to present its finding of compliance or non-compliance with the comprehensive plan. Proponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments in support of the proposal. Opponents will have 15 minutes to present arguments against the proposal. Then county staff will have 5 minutes to present any amended recommendations, and the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal and summation. The 15 minutes for proponents and opponents is the total time allotted among them. So if there are a number of persons who wish to speak, the 15 minutes will be distributed among those persons. If that is the case and you wish to speak, or if you wish to designate a single spokesperson to represent your views, you may do so. When you come to the microphone to speak, please first state your name and address for the record. The meeting is being recorded, so please speak into the microphone so your testimony can be heard and recorded. And when you're finished speaking, please see the clerk to my right here to sign in for the record. Now we'll ask the County Attorney's Office to state the legal requirements for requesting oral argument at the public meeting where the Board of County Commissioners will make a final decision.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Good evening. My name is Cameron Clark. I'm an Assistant County Attorney. Tonight's public hearing is the first step of a two-step rezoning process. This hearing is a time for rezoning applicants and interested parties to present testimony and evidence. Any evidence presented tonight will become the complete factual record of each application, and no additional evidence can be introduced after the closing of each application. The second step of the rezoning process is a public meeting before the Board of County Commissioners, where the board will take a decision on each application heard tonight. Tonight's applications are scheduled to go to the board at July 18th land use meeting. When considering applications, the board will only review the record created at tonight's hearing and the recommendation made by the hearing master for each application. The hearing master will file a recommendation for each application heard tonight on June 6th. The Board of County Commissioners has established a policy that directs which rezoning and major modification applications are to be placed on the consent agenda of the board's land use meeting. Applications that propose to add density outside the urban service area and applications that are on roadways with a failing level of service are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. Applications that do not have consistent recommendations of approval or denial are also not qualified to be placed on the consent agenda. And finally, applications that have had evidence or testimony provided to the record by non-applicant parties of record either prior to or at tonight's public hearing are not qualified for placement on the consent agenda. The board shall allow public testimony by parties of record at its meeting to consider the hearing master's recommendation for any item on the regular agenda. Any public testimony shall be limited to the record of the proceedings before the hearing master unless additional evidence has been found admissible in accordance with Section 10.03.04D of the Land Development Code. A party of record is an individual who fits into one of the following four categories: someone who is present tonight and presents testimony or other evidence. Second, someone who is certified by the U.S. Postal Service as having been mailed notice of tonight's hearing. Third, someone who submitted documentary evidence to the master file at least 2 business days prior to tonight's hearing. Or fourth, someone who submitted documentary evidence by proxy at tonight's hearing. Again, the content of oral argument before the board shall be limited to the content and testimony and other evidence submitted verbally or in writing to the hearing master tonight. It's the role of the County Attorney's Office to ensure that only individuals who have met these requirements are allowed to speak before the board, and to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is introduced or allowed at the board's public meeting. For these reasons, please make sure all information you wish the board to consider at the public meeting is entered in tonight's record. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, as I said, all testimony taken tonight must be under oath. So if you plan to speak tonight, would you please stand as you're able, raise your right hand, and I'll swear you in. If there are any online who plan to speak, please also raise your hand to be sworn in. All right. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right, thank you. All right. County staff, I believe we're ready to call the first case, please.
Sure. Our first application is item B1. This is Major Mod Application 22-0689. I reviewed this for Development Services and will present staff findings after presentation by the applicant.
Okay. All right, applicant, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Elise Batzel for the record. Before we start our presentation, may we submit evidence into the record?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
you're
hearing this one.
this one? I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, again, Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller, here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Falcone property. We're here with our entire development team tonight. Our team members include our civil engineers at HAF, our traffic engineers with Links and Associates, ARCS Architecture, and our legal and planning consultants. So this property is generally located in Valrico. It is 18.48 acres, and it is generally located at the southwest corner of State Road 60 and Miller Road. As you can see, this is located within the urban service area, well within the urban service area. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It is located in the State Road 60 Brandon Boulevard Overlay District for design. It's also in the Valrico Countywide Planning Area, but it is not in the Brandon Community Plan. There was some talk at the comp plan amendment, which will track this, about this being at the edge of the urban service area. It's actually 1.6 miles from the urban service boundary, just to note that for the record. So I won't go through all of this, but this is the third time we've been back to the zoning hearing master. In July of 2022, the zoning hearing master recommended approval of this application at a higher density, about 17 units per acre. It was remanded back to the BOCC at that time to consider closing off or looking at alternative access to Miller Road. We came back with an alternative site plan that changed that access to emergency access only. And once again, the zoning hearing master recommended approval. At the hearing in which the comp plan amendment was heard with the rezoning, there was a companion zoning, and prior to our application, there was a very similar application at Res 20 that was voted down. So we asked to continue. As a result, we are coming back to you with a lower density and asking zoning hearing master to reconsider our plan. I do want to put into the record, primarily for the benefit of the community that might be there and the BOCC, that this property is eligible for development under the new Live Local Act. The parameters of that would be up to 35 dwelling units per acre and a height of 5 stories if this rezoning were not to be approved. So this is just a chart for you, Madam Hearing Master, of the project modifications from our initial application at close to 17 units per acre to the current application. We are asking for 12 dwelling units per acre or 13.64 units per acre with a graywater bonus, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. The total number of units went from 312 units to 221 or 252 with a graywater bonus. The maximum height originally was 4 stories. We are now at 3 stories. The full access is now a exit-only access. We have 0 4-story buildings. Half of our buildings closest to State Road 60 are limited to 3 stories. And in this last iteration of the plan, the units that are closest, the buildings that are closest to the single-family residential, have now been limited to 2 stories in height. So the project, again, 221 or 252 dwelling units if graywater is utilized. You can see here just the layout of the plan. I won't reiterate what I just said about the development requirements, but we're happy to answer any questions. So just to talk a little bit about the graywater bonus, which I know a lot of people are not familiar with. The graywater bonus was passed in 2021. That bonus basically says it is a statutory density bonus on top of any other land development regulations that says 25% density bonuses are permitted or required if 75% of your dwelling units utilize this graywater technology. If 100% of the units utilize the graywater technology, there is a 35% density bonus. Again, this is a system, very simply for benefits of the people that don't know what graywater is, that takes water from the showers and the sinks, it filters it, and it reuses it to flush toilets and or irrigate the property. It was originally adopted in the water conservation element rather than the local government, which is why you don't see a lot of these regulations or a lot of these developments coming forward, but I'm sure that you'll see more. So this property is not a clean slate. This is an approved commercial development today, as of right. There are 75,000 square feet of commercial general uses and 86 townhomes permitted today. The maximum height under the existing development entitlements is 40 feet. There are 2 existing full access points on Miller Road permitted today. That equates to 5,282 trips on the roadway. And there is a 40-foot building setback from the property line. We are significantly reducing the impacts with this development, and we've outlined that reduction in impacts here. 3 stories, 0 full access points on Miller Road, a reduction to 1,691 trips per day, and a 95-foot setback on the southern boundary. And this is just a visual. I'm going to show you 2 visuals of the approved development in size and scale versus what's being proposed today. Again, this will show the massing and sort of the scale of that approved commercial development compared to what's approved. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our expert planner, Isabel Albert, who will talk to you about consistency and compatibility issues.
Thank you, Elise. For the record, Isabel Albert with HAF, 1000 North Ashley Drive, Tampa, Florida, and I am a certified planner. So this brings us to the infill. You know, the comprehensive plan does talk about the infill. We try to discourage commercial development. This is Objective 23, and this is also an area, as you can see, that it is mostly commercial, but this would be a great infill of a multifamily development. There's 2 large grocery stores there, which would be a great walkability for the area. It is, you know, with the proposal as reducing again, it was found consistent and compatible previously. Now it's again more consistent and compatible. So this brings us to the distances. The distances remain the same. They're still over 180 feet to 460 feet of distance from existing homes to the existing development that we're proposing. Those are very large distances, which you would typically not find between a single family and a multifamily. But and also these large lots next to us have a big vegetation in the back that again furthers address the compatibility. And this takes us to what the before and after. Ms. Batzel showed you the setbacks and the buffers requirement that were previously approved and how our development is actually increased. The increased setback is definitely along the south, east, and west, and that was performed with our development. And these go back to the site vision or site triangle. Previously, even with the 4 stories and 3 stories, it was found compatible. You could see the site that even with our buffers, their existing development that's currently approved is there seen in red, and then with our proposal is definitely going to be make a better site of visual. And this is seen throughout all the development around every time to all different angles. You see that the previous commercial and townhomes with a shorter setback and greater height can be seen, but with our proposal, that is reduced. You see it again with this site, and again here. And then you see that all around. This is our clubhouse showing, but then you've got that commercial there near that home. And again, and then there's this actually, you'll see with this on new development, which is so much better. And next, it will be Steve Henry, and he will go through transportation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you come sign in, please?
Good evening.
Can you come
Steve.
sign in, please? Thank you.
Good evening. Steve Henry, Links & Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa, 33607. We have conducted a detailed traffic analysis for the project. What I want to do is give you a quick summary of the change over what was currently approved for the project versus what we're proposing. So up here, it shows a trip generation comparison. The red is on your right, excuse me, on your left is the existing, which would generate about 5,882 daily trip ends, versus the green, which is what we're proposing, which would generate about 1,691. It's about a 78% decrease in the trip generation. Then we also looked at AM and PM peak hours. Again, the red is existing, the green is proposed. AM, 2 214 is the approved. 101 would be what we're proposing, a 52% reduction. And then in the PM 506 versus 129, a 74% reduction. So overall, the proposed project before you tonight is a significant decrease in traffic over what could be built there based on the existing zoning that's out there today. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Elise Batzel again. This bar graph just shows the changes to height and density from each of the proposals that have been brought before the zoning hearing master. Development Services staff has recommended approval at each iteration along the way. Planning Commission has found it consistent at each iteration along the way. And the prior zoning hearing master's approval was a recommendation of approval. In conclusion, and I think this is really important, this developer has tried very hard to make accommodations for community concerns. There were community meetings. At each expression of a concern, they went back to the drawing table and they changed the plan. I give them a lot of credit because there's not that many developers that would do this. And they're back here today. Even with the option of developing under the Live Local Act, they believe this is a good plan and it's an economically viable plan. And so they are bringing it back to you for a recommendation of approval, we hope. I do want to just mention that the resumes for our experts, both planning and transportation, are in your materials and qualifies them as expert witnesses, and we'll reserve any remaining time for rebuttal, please.
All right, and just
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
you voluntarily then changed that plan amendment from Res 20 to Res 12? That wasn't something that was requested? Okay.
That was not requested.
Okay.
The alternative plan that was moving forward that was very similar to ours in a very similar location did get voted down in a split vote. And so the developers decided not to go to Res 16, in fact, but to go to Res 12 with a graywater bonus. And the reason that we did that is Res 12 is the comp plan amendment. The graywater may get us a little bit extra density, but then the issues with respect to that comp plan category and whether that is consistent with all the other development pattern tends to be an easier approval. So that's why we did that.
I understand.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for the development team?
Not at this time, no, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. Again, this is a remand review for major modification 22-0689, which, as you saw, is a request to modify the existing PD, which is entitled with commercial and townhome uses, instead replacing those with multi-family uses. A related comprehensive plan amendment is also proposed, and both the major mod application and the comprehensive plan amendment will be heard together at the August 10th, 2023 BOCC CPA hearing. And again, that's August 10th, 2023. The request has various changes from the previous application, which was heard in October of 2022. Those include some request changes and some layout changes. As you heard first, the comp plan amendment has changed from Res 20 to Res 12, and also with the graywater density bonus. And this will reduce the proposed number of units from 312 to 221 if they utilize the 12 unit per acre option, or 252 if the graywater system bonus is used. And on the site plan, there were some other changes, one being to convert the two southernmost buildings from 3-story to 2-story, to add an additional building, which will be 2 stories in height, reduce the southern setback from 185 feet to 90 feet, shift the southernmost parking and drive aisle southward, reduce the southern buffer from 50 feet to 20 feet, reduce the western and eastern setbacks from 110 feet to 100 feet, reduce the northeastern setback from 96 to 90 feet, convert the 2 buildings south of the clubhouse from 4-story to 3-story. And also in the report, it mentions that the northeastern buffer would go down to 15 feet. However, the applicant has opted to change that to 20 feet so that there will be no change in that. With these changes, the project continues to meet or exceed LDC requirements related to setbacks, buffering, and screening. Therefore, staff continues to find the request compatible with the surrounding area. As you heard from Ms. Batzel, there is the gray water systems bonus that the applicant is seeking. And as you heard, it can allow up to 25% increase. For this project, the applicant is requesting an additional 31 units, which would be a 14% bonus if they choose to utilize that. Staff does recommend approval, subject to proposed conditions, and I'm available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Planning Commission?
Carlianos with Planning Commission staff. Correction for the record. First of all, the third bullet point on the staff report states that the property has a pending plan amendment for the proposed future land use of residential 20. It actually should state residential 12, so just note that that needs to be stricken from the record. The subject site is located in the urban service area and it's not within the limits of a community plan. The property has a future land use designation of residential 9 and residential 4. To the north and northwest is the residential 6 future land use category, which allows 6 dwelling units to the acre and commercial uses at 0.25 FAR. To the west and northeast is the residential 9 future land use category, which allows up to 9 dwelling units and commercial uses up to 0.5 FAR. Now to the south, southeast, southwest, and east is residential 4 future land use category, which allows 4 dwelling units to the acre or 0.25 FAR. Surrounding area is characterized by public institutions, light industrial, light commercial, and single-family uses. The property does have frontage on north on State Route 60, which is a 4-lane roadway considered to be a transit corridor. To the west of the property is a drive-through restaurant with open storage, vehicle rental, and to the east and southeast is the Winn-Dixie Shopping Plaza, a drive-through restaurant, and a barbershop. South and southeast are single-family detached homes. North, northwest, northeast is a mobile home park community, a realtor's office, and the United States Postal Office. The applicant is requesting a major modification of the plan development to allow for 252 multifamily apartments, or with the gray water bonus, or 202 dwelling units without it. Now, we understand that this project was remanded back to at the Board of County Commissioners on March 9th, again to reduce the future land use category to residential 12. So Planning Commission staff did review the request per the residential 12 future land use category. Now, at this current state, we find that the proposed request is consistent with the growth management strategies. It recognizes the benefit of concentrated growth, where existing capital investments do exist, such as centralized water and wastewater facilities, major roadway access, and public services. The property is found within a wellhead protection area. However, the proposed apartment complex does not conflict within the wellhead protection area or the list of restricted activities within that area as well. Now, the site plan provided by the applicant dated April 25th, 2023, it shows, proposed apartment complex composed of 8 buildings, 4 garages and a clubhouse. Staff has analyzed the site plan and the narrative and other supporting documentation. PC staff finds that the proposed mitigation is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies. Furthermore, the property was once approved for a plan development with a maximum of 75,000 square feet of commercial general uses and 86 townhomes. The proposed development increases the density, however, it does remove the commercial entitlements. The proposed site plan accomplishes a good design practices by concentrating buildings towards the middle of the site, and it creates a far enough setback to offset any potential negative impacts to the surrounding uses. Overall, the proposed major modification would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and it is compatible with the existing and planned development pattern found within the surrounding area. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
No questions for you, thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? I do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Please come forward. Remember to state your name and your address into the microphone, please.
My name's Charles Bothy. I live at 2303 Highway 60, which is just right next to this planned development. In 2015, the zoning was changed to residential 9. We know there's going to be growth, progress. We feel that residential 9 is going to impact the neighborhood adversely right now, and that's with less than 100 units. What they're proposing now, they had proposed residential 20, which got turned down. Now it's residential 12, but it's still raising the dwellings to maybe 250. I live right next to where this development is proposed. It is a parking lot out there. Highway 60 is a main evacuation route. Now it's supposed to be widened, but it hasn't even been funded yet. And we realize there's going to be development, progress, but we feel that this is going to be too dense and just out of character for our neighborhood. And that's really it. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Rodriguez Belcher. I live at 406 South Miller Road. I'm a concerned member of the community. I appreciate that the developers have changed the design to be a little bit better, but I still feel that the density is too high for the area. And the reason that I'm here today is because I have attended multiple townhouse meetings, public hearings, public meetings with the commissioners, and everybody's complaint is traffic. Our road systems cannot handle what we have now. And it is frustrating to the people who actually walk and drive our roads. We want something, we know it's going to be developed. It was already redeveloped to, rezoned to the RS 4 and 9 and a little bit of commercial. Now they're asking for this because the pandemic has happened and we're having a housing crisis. At one of the meetings that I attended, a town hall meeting with the commissioner, #1 complaint by the sheriff department in Hillsborough County is speeding and aggressive driving. We're #2 in Florida, our county, for that. Highway 60 is an evacuation road. Lithia Pinecrest is an evacuation road. In a case of an emergency, how are we going to get out, the citizens that live there? Why do we continue to approve these high-story, high-dense projects when our roads do not? They can't stand them. They can't withstand them. And I know that they have their their transportation reports, but as a common citizen, I don't understand all that stuff. But I do know that our sidewalks on Miller Road, we're within 2 miles of a school. Both sides are not developed. They're dangerous. We don't have street lights to walk down Miller Road. There are a lot of people that walk, but there's a lot more people that drive. In one of the town hall meetings, the sheriff department has said that we are behind on fire station. We need 22 fire stations in our area to accommodate the people that we have now. And now you want to double and triple the number of people that are coming in. It is not fair to the community because we live here and we value our quality of life. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Also, I contacted the FDOT. We were promised that State Road 60 was going to be widened. Their words are 2029. It has been deferred to 2029 due to funding constraints. Funding is a major issue, and we don't have funding for our roads. We don't have a subway system. We don't have good bus transportations on Miller Road, not to mention the exits from Winn-Dixie, from Hungry Howie's. I know they're going to only do an exit, but it is a nightmare now because people have to look far to see if they can turn left onto Miller Road. The roads are the issue, and that is the major point. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. All right, is there anyone else here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Applicant?
For the record, again, Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller. Mr. Bothy's house is located between this development and other commercial development right along State Road 60. And I understand that it's difficult when you see your neighborhood change, but I do want to just bring up one graphic in that regard. Ms. Albert testified that this was an ideal urban infill situation. If you look at where this is located along State Road 60, you can see the extreme commercial dense development pattern that has happened, all except with this little small piece of property. There's commercial development to the north, there's commercial development to the west, there's commercial development to the east. There's also a CSX railway further to the east where there's a lot of new development that have already been approved. So this area and this corridor is not transitioning, it is fully developed, and it's the perfect opportunity for infill development. With respect to traffic, you did hear testimony from our expert transportation engineer and in your own staff report. Oh, thank you. That this will significantly reduce the trips that come off of this site. We can't look at this in a vacuum as if this isn't an approved development. Yes, ma'am, you were going to ask a question.
I was. Could you please make it clear, particularly for the concerned citizens, that the difference in the traffic that this proposed development would bring compared to the traffic in the already approved situation on this property?
Yes, could you share my screen, please? Just to be clear, the daily trips, that is the number of total daily trips that are going to be generated by the approved development. If it's developed as of right today, that's 5,282 trips. We are reducing that transportation and traffic trip generation impact by 68%. It will be reduced to 1,691. In addition, if you look at the AM and PM peak hours, as Mr. Henry already testified, there's a 52% reduction and a 74% reduction in the number of trips that will be generated from this development.
Okay, and this is comparing?
This is comparing the approved development that can be built as of right today versus the development that we are proposing.
All right, thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely, of course. Your transportation staff has also commented with expert testimony in the staff report, this will significantly reduce the trips. With respect to fire and other services, we have to pay, and this is mostly for the community's benefit, we have to pay significant impact fees to the county. The county takes those fees and they provide services within the urban service boundary. The system that we have particularly our mobility fee system for transportation, takes the ability away from the developer to concurrently make modifications to the existing roadway. What we can do and what we are doing is making many site access improvements on our site. That will include sidewalks around our site, entry and exits that are clearly marked and clearly signed. So with respect to our property, the property that is being rezoned, there will be a significant improvement in safety around that property. And hopefully we have to make various open and turn lane improvements, and Steve can talk to you about those specifically if you have questions, but I do want to address that from the safety perspective. And finally, I think it's always important, particularly now, when we have so many neighbors, you can look out here tonight, to remember that in Hillsborough County, there's a private property rights element. And that private property rights element is policy 1.1. And it mandates that the rights of the property owner have to be included in the decision. And I think so many times we as a community forget that people have the right to develop their property within limitations and within boundaries. But that includes the right to develop the property. And we believe that this developer has done a really wonderful job in doing that responsibly, consistent with the comp plan, and compatible with surrounding uses. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, this will close the hearing then on major modification 22-0689. All right, the next two items will be heard by Zoning Hearing Master Finch. And staff, would you please introduce the next item?
Sure. The next item is D1, PD application 22-1702. This is a rezoning to plain development, and this was continued from the last ZHM hearing for the submittal of some testimony that was necessary, and Brian Grady will expand on that.
Yes, Madam Hearing Officer, you recall at the end of the hearing, we had continued this in order simply to allow to be placed in the record affidavit from the applicant attesting the fact that they were not subject to the requirements in state statute regarding relocations of mobile home parks. They did provide that information, and it is in the record, and our staff report reflects that. So, you know, it's your discretion as to what additional testimony you need, because again, it was continued after we had taken testimony. It might be appropriate to see if anyone wants to speak to the specific issue, but beyond that, again, it was just, the record was, it was continued and kept open, and for the sole purpose of allowing that additional information to be placed in the record, and reports have been updated to reflect that additional information.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Grady. So we'll start with the applicant. If they are here and they want to say a few words, you'll recall that the sole purpose of the continuance was to address this affidavit issue in compliance with the statute. So I'd like to limit the testimony to that, if you could, but feel free to give us your name and address and whatever comments you'd like to make.
My name is Steven Sposato. I'm a certified planning with Level Up consultant here in Tampa. And really nothing more to add than what Mr. Grady said. We very much appreciate being allowed to come back like this, and so we just affirm what was already in the record.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. All right, Mr. Grady, nothing further from the staff perspective, right? All right.
That's correct.
And then I'll just ask for the record if there is anyone here in the audience or online that would like to speak to item D1. It's rezoning PD 22-1702. Seeing no one either in support or in opposition regarding that case. All right, then I believe nothing further is needed in terms of rebuttal testimony or from staff, correct? All right, then with that, we'll close rezoning PD 22-1702 and go to the next case.
Our next item is major mod application 23-0132. This is a major modification to an existing plan development. I reviewed this for development services and will present staff findings after the applicant's presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. I have some binders to place in the record while I'm queuing up the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Jake Kramer with Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, number 2100. Please be representing GL Homes on this application tonight, proposing a major modification to redevelop an abandoned golf course in the Pebble Creek plan development. GL Homes has this property under contract to purchase. This is a privately owned golf course. We've offered two binders into the record. The first one, all of those materials were placed into the record last week. They include expert reports, as well as all of our CVs. There's a second binder we also presented that has a couple of additional expert reports that you'll hear more about. So we realized with this application that we needed to be sensitive to the needs of the existing community. This is infill development. And we really felt we had to assemble a team that had golf course redevelopment experience. Now, GL Homes, the applicant, does have golf course redevelopment experience. Just in the past 5 years, they've worked on 4 redevelopments in Florida. But before we jump into what we're proposing, I want to give you some perspective. Pebble Creek is really an ideal infill location, and the comprehensive plan strongly supports that infill redevelopment. As you can see here, it's actually in a bit of an enclave. It's sort of a hole in the donut. You have in yellow developments in Pasco, unincorporated Hillsborough, and the city of Tampa that are mostly built out. And in orange are relatively newly approved developments that are in various phases of construction. So this area is really, it's one of the fastest growing areas in the state and really in the country as well, in Pasco and Hillsborough County. Now, this site is within Res 4, and the zoning is PD. So this site is within a larger PD called the Pebble Creek Plan Development. It was developed in 1970, it was approved in 1972 rather, which was about 5 years after the golf course was initially developed. Neither the PD nor any of the documents on title restrict the use of the property to a golf course in perpetuity. This PD has 689 excess and unbuilt units, according to the staff report. We're not asking for any additional units. We're just asking to place a portion of those approved units on the golf course. So here's our concept plan. There's a large copy in your binder if it's easier to review it that way. Again, we're requesting 251 single-family homes at a density of only 1.7 dwelling units per acre. We're adding one access on the west off of Regent Park Drive to connect us to Bruce B. Downs. We have 25 acres of wetlands that we will be protecting to ensure the health of Pebble Creek, and 5 neighborhood parks are being created. We'll talk about those in more detail. So this area has changed just a little bit since Pebble Creek was built initially, the golf course in 1967. So I wanted to help put this in context. When this golf course was originally built over 50 years ago, it was the first thing to be developed in this part of the county. And the course today has been closed for a number of years, and under modern golf course design principles, it's really considered substandard. So in 1967, humans had not landed on the moon. We just got our first handheld calculator. We were in the Vietnam War, Beatlemania, and we just got the Big Mac. So a lot has changed in 50 years, not only in this area, but in planning principles. And one of the primary planning principles is that as communities evolve, our plans should too. So we tried to do that in designing this project, and I'll give GL Homes a lot of credit because the very first thing they did for almost the entire year, first year they had the property under contract, was they spent time engaging with the community. They listened and didn't submit anything into the county until they had had a number of community meetings. They had had a number of manners and mechanisms of community outreach to really get as much feedback as they possibly could to design this project. So one of the most impressive things to me was the extensive door knocking campaign. The GL Homes team knocked on all 1,353 doors in the community. They didn't outsource that to some PR firm. They actually got out there, beat the pavement, knocked on doors, and met residents. And then residents that were undecided or asked for a return visit, they did that. In addition, they had a number of other types of engagement. They had a virtual community event, and then they had 3 large group in-person community meetings. They also created a web page. They sent out a number of flyers. They sent out email questionnaires to, again, solicit as much feedback as possible to design this community in a sensitive way. So again, and we're going to get to the plan, but what I'm trying to emphasize is they spent nearly a year soliciting all this feedback to come up with design principles before they even had us put pen to paper and come up with the plan. So these are some of the major requests of the community, if you will, that we heard in that engagement. So they asked for no apartments, even though there's a lot of density on this property, and apartments could feasibly be built here. GL Homes said that we would stick to only single-family product. The community asked for no rentals, and GL Homes agreed to that. So this will be for-sale product only. The community asked for density less than the maximum that could be allowed, both in the PD and on the property, and we've done that. One of the most important things we heard from the community was no entrance into the heart of the neighborhood. Transportation staff initially asked us to consider a second entrance into really the heart of the community. After we got their feedback, we worked with transportation staff to make sure that wasn't going to be something included. They asked for us to find ways to protect the environment. You'll hear about that later. They asked to protect their quality of life and not overburden the existing community's parks, which is why we're adding parks. They asked for guaranteed maintenance mechanisms because the property really is an eyesore right now because it's been abandoned. So we'll be doing that through an HOA. And then they asked us to meet the code requirements. So we designed a project without any PD waivers or variations, which in my experience is fairly unusual. So with that, I'd like to bring up our certified planner, Stephen Sposato, to walk you through some of the planning concepts.
Thank you, Jake. Stephen Sposato, certified planner with Level Up Consulting, 505 East Jackson Street here in Tampa. The planning issues are straightforward, as evidenced in the staff report. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is compatible with adjacent development. It's infill, located in the urban service area where development is encouraged to go. There's efficiencies with existing infrastructure, public utilities, and that. We are proposing a change in use, which is single-family detached, which is the same or similar to what is found adjacent or along our edges. As Jake mentioned, with fee simple ownership, each owner has a vested interest, and primarily through the HOA, to ensure maintenance and upkeep of common area features. And with an infill project, there's kind of two tracks, substantial emphasis on design. So our design professionals, best practices, layering information, soils, vegetation, those kind of things to come up with a plan. But I think what's most remarkable about this project, and Jake really went over it as well, is the community involvement process. And I've been a planner since the mid-90s, not quite as old as the golf course. But this is the most, I think, robust involvement process that I've seen. It's been thorough and comprehensive. Let me go to, here we go. Okay. I mentioned that project is compatible with the comp plan, and noted that we're proposing single-family detached. Really with a design emphasis on our edges, and this graphic shows density. We're at 1.7, which is less than the single-family detached that's around us, which is the yellow color. And our density is substantially influenced by the amount of preservation in lakes, but it's substantially less dense if you look along the western boundary of the site, where you see some of the oranges and the browns. That density is much more substantial than what we're proposing, and includes townhouses and multifamily. But overall, density is at, sure that 3.29 units to the acre. The culmination of these efforts is our PD site plan. So the design focus with the design professionals and then community involvement really comes to this plan. And this ensures the consistency and certainty as the project moves from this point to construction. So the amenities and enhancements not only focused on what's within our modification boundary, but also benefit the community of Pebble Creek generally. These are some examples, and they include a 3.2 acre community park, and that's kind of along the western boundary near our project entrance. And then there's 4 passive parks on Regents Park Drive, and I'm going to highlight one of those with a rendering or perspective, and this is number 4. We call it, it's the Peninsula Fishing Park. And this is a perspective looking from Regents Park Drive through the park, with the showing the edge of the lake, and then into the community. The emphasis also includes other enhancements are included, and those are kind of inventoried here, but I'll just briefly go over those. Water features pedestrian connector. Again, that's from Bruce B. Downs to our project entrance. There's design entry features that are being enhanced, wetlands, planting more trees, and then at our project entrance, we're showing a turn lane, and then our gate is placed back twice the requirement to ensure stacking is internalized. Just my last slide is just an example that the emphasis on design, and it's not just along site features, but also the architecture. Mr. Henry is going to take over from here. Thank you.
Good evening. Steve Henry, Links & Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. We did the traffic analysis for the project, did a detailed analysis for that, looking at not only the access, but also the adjacent intersections. This project, as indicated, has one project access. It is to Regents Parks Drive. It is on the collector portion of the project. So when you go from 581 to our project, there's no single-family homes fronting on the road. In addition, as indicated, we're having a right turn lane on Regents Park Drive into the project to help with the traffic circulation. And we've set back that gate further than the code would require, again, to provide better circulation and to not have the impact on Regents Park Drive. Then in addition to that, technically Regents Park Drive is considered to be a substandard road, primarily due to the fact it does not have bike lanes. When it was built, those obviously did not exist, but it is by the Transportation Technical Manual considered to be a substandard road. So what we are doing is adding a 10-foot sidewalk that goes from 581 to the east, actually east of our project driveway, to tie into that sidewalk that is on the south side of Regents Park Drive. And so we have submitted a design exception for that, and it has been deemed approvable by the county engineer. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake Kramer again. We have several environmental experts that are here if you have any questions, but I just wanted to touch on a few of their studies that are in the record. There will be soil cleanup needed. That's very common for golf course developments across Florida. This will be overseen by Florida DEP as well as local agencies. They're very familiar with the process, as are we. We'll be following those rules and regulations. Again, we did design this this site as much as possible to avoid wetland impacts and protect the health of Pebble Creek. And then finally, our wildlife biologist has said that the lake creation that we're doing will increase the areas for foraging for potential wildlife in those open spaces. So again, this is what exists on the property. Is the existing state is an abandoned golf course. So the choice is not really between keeping golf and building a community. It's whether we are revitalizing this existing community. And this really may be our only chance to do it. My understanding, we don't represent the landowner. My understanding is the landowner believes that the Live Local Act applies to this property and intends to pursue that process for multifamily development if we're not able to get this particular site plan approved. And as I bring this to a close, I just want to address a few hard truths head on. First, golf is not coming back. There's a report in the record from a golf course expert explaining that. The second hard truth is that we're only requesting units that are already approved and planned for in the existing plan development. And then the third hard truth is that the character of Pebble Creek today, the character of this neighborhood, is a wonderful neighborhood that's being weighed down by a plan from over 50 years ago. So with that, we're trying to rejuvenate the community with what we're doing here. And our team is here if you have any questions.
All right, and
Thank
right
you.
under the wire. I do have some questions. And pertaining to several of your experts, I didn't want to interrupt your presentation, but
Sure,
here we
thank
go.
you.
So the first regarding compatibility, the units that are proposed, the subject property shows to me, when I look at the plan, a significant amount of lakes, retention area, and so forth along the perimeter of the subject property. So my question is, for those existing homes that are in Pebble Creek, the existing part of the development outside of this boundary, for anyone that now currently fronts that golf course, is there, in the new plan, is there anyone that would then front a single-family home in your proposed site plan?
No, there are either a lake, there's preservation areas along the entire perimeter of the project site. There actually is one area, if I could point to it, kind of right here. Can you see that right there?
I do not.
So it's in the northwest corner where there's an existing multifamily development.
Yes.
That's the only area we have units adjacent to another development without preservation or a lake. And that, can you see that?
I know where the multifamily is, so I know the area you're talking about. I don't see your cursor, but I understand the proximity.
Did that answer?
It does answer my question. Thank you so much. And then my next question, Mr. Kramer, you already answered that regarding the environmental cleanup, that they will comply with DEP standards and so forth, all of those regulations. So that's that. And then the bulk of my questions relate to traffic. First, Mr. Henry, you touched on this in your presentation. That design exception that Regents Park Drive doesn't meet that TS4 standard. It does meet, the travel lanes do meet the required width. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So it's county standard, it's 11 feet. These are 11-foot travel lanes.
11 to 12 feet, yes.
Okay. So the reason that you need the design exception is it doesn't have bike lanes, and there was something else, I believe.
It was bike lanes, and there's no sidewalk on the south side of the road.
Okay, and now there's a proposal to mitigate that substandard with a 10-foot sidewalk that leads into the property.
Correct, and it connects the trail that is on 581 to east of our property to tie into the existing sidewalk that is along Regents Park Drive on the south side of the project.
Okay, and then regarding the one access, I know the county typically requires 2 access points for this, but your traffic analysis and I guess your argument of operational impacts, if there were to be 2 access points, and I'll talk to the county transportation staff about that just to get their concurrence.
Sure.
But is it true that if you wanted to, you could leave the subject property parcel and you could turn right on Regents Park northbound and go all the way around to get out another entrance? Is that correct?
Sure.
You're not blocking that access?
No, we're not prohibiting that. Obviously, you'd be going significant way out of your way to be able to do that. So that's why we don't believe that anybody would do that. But could somebody do that? Yes, they could.
Okay, and the subject property, the roads are proposed to be private, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, and are the Pebble Creek existing development roads private or public?
That I do not know.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay, thank you. No, normally I don't allow people to yell out from the crowd, but thank you for that information. All right, and I believe that's the extent of my questions for traffic right now. Thank you so much.
I don't know if you want me to go into the justification for the one access point.
While you're here, if you want to put that quickly on the record, of
Sure, and
course.
it is in the report, but basically the code does allow, not even a variance, but the code does allow you to reduce the number of access points that would be required. So under the code, based on the number of trips that we generate, we'd be required to have 2 access points. But the code clearly says that if it's demonstrated by a traffic analysis that the one access will function adequately and safely, then that is justification for going to one access. So in this case, we looked at 2 different things. Well, first, we looked at if you had 2 accesses, where would that second access be? Well, the second access would be on the eastern portion of the project, which would then put additional traffic on those sections of whether it's Pebble Creek or Regents Park that have single-family homes fronting on it. So from our standpoint, we did not believe it was, from an operational standpoint and safety standpoint, a good idea to be putting additional traffic on those portions of the road that have single-family homes fronting on it. In addition to that, we then looked at where those roadways come out, and obviously they all come out to 581. And when you look at Regents Park North, where we're accessing, there's actually 4 lanes that approach 581. When you get down to either Pebble Creek or Regents Park South, there's only 2 lanes. And so the capacity of those intersections are much less than what we have on the north access that we've got. And so we looked at that not only from a capacity standpoint, but also an operation standpoint. And when you look at the analysis, it shows that our access works acceptable level of service with the one access, and the intersection of 581 and Regions Park operates acceptable level of service with our project added to it.
All right, thank you for that
Thank you.
clarification. I
Sure.
appreciate it. Mr. Kramer, that's the end of my questions, unless you had anything further.
Thank you. I just wanted to also add that we do also have an emergency access,
Yes.
and that will include pedestrian access as well for connectivity.
Yes, and that's gated with the Knox box
Yes, ma'am.
control. All right, thank you. I did see that on the plan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll go to Development Services.
Good evening, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. For this application, staff reviewed a request to modify PD 72-0319 as most recently modified by PRS 97-0012 to allow for the redevelopment of a 145-acre golf course into 251 single-family detached units. The site is located within the Pebble Creek community, within the urban service area, and within the Res 4 future land use category. Properties around the modification are developed with multifamily, two-family, and single-family developments. As you saw, the project proposes to utilize open space areas, stormwater ponds, and existing wetlands to provide significant separation from the majority of the existing uses. This will internalize the lots, and the applicant has committed to enhance building design for the homes. The proposed density will be 1.68 units per acre, which is less than the overall Pebble Creek density, which is 2.82 units per acre. As you saw, the project also proposes 5 parks, which will be available to the residents of Pebble Creek. One park will allow passive and/or general outdoor recreational uses. 3 parks will be located along various parts of Regents Park Drive and will be limited to passive recreational uses. And there will be 1 internal park for the proposed use by the subject site's residents. The project's primary access will occur along the west at Regents Drive or Regents Park Drive and necessitate a right turn lane at this intersection. A required emergency-only access point is proposed to the north, and existing vegetation to the east of the proposed emergency access will remain. Within the project, traffic calming devices will be developed to address internal roadway speeds. Lastly, it has been demonstrated to staff that the project's 251 units, the 597-acre project will not exceed the maximum of 4 units per acre. Staff received a finding of consistency from the Planning Commission and no objections from reviewing agencies. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to proposed conditions. And I'll also note that prior to the beginning of this meeting, I believe our staff provided you with a revised staff report. And those include revised conditions that have been provided to address the proposed parks. And those are found in conditions 11.5, 11.6, and 11.7. And these changes specifically categorize these parks as private community parks, which will be available only to the residents within Pebble Creek, with, of course, the internal park within the subject area, which will be just limited to those residents. And also, if needed, Richard Perez with Development Services reviewed this for transportation, and he is available if you have any questions.
I do for Mr. Perez, but before I leave you, I just want on the record, with the 251 units that are requested from their existing approved entitlements, how many units are remaining to be theoretically available?
I can look at those numbers and respond back to you when you're done.
All right, well, I'll go to Mr. Perez and then we'll come back to you real quick. All right, Mr. Perez, are you available for a transportation question?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
All right, good evening. You heard my question to Mr. Henry about typically the county would require 2 access points, but he presented a transportation analysis that showed operational and safety issues associated with that. And I just wanted to get on the record your agreement with his analysis that the project is proper to proceed with 1 access with the emergency access shown.
Yes, that is correct. Per section 60403I of the Land Development Code, a development of this size, generating the peak hour traffic that it does, would be required to have 2 access points to the residential subdivision. However, 60403I-5 does allow for meeting certain criteria that fewer access points could be provided. And the criteria being that a professional engineer submit a traffic study showing that the access, singular access or fewer than what's required would operate sufficiently and not experience any safety or operational issues. The applicant submitted said study, comparing it with one access point or two access points as required versus the one that's proposed, with a second access, assuming it would be somewhere further to the east along Regents Park Drive. There would be more traffic that would go south and then circle back through Regents Park Drive south to Bruce B. Downs or via Pebble Creek Drive. There would be impacts, including potentially the many homes that are fronted on Pebble Creek Drive and Regents Park Drive south would experience additional traffic. And then the intersections both of Pebble Creek Drive and Regents Park Drive south with Bruce B. Downs, the study shows that they would have less capacity to deal with the increased traffic. The study was reviewed with the county engineer and found acceptable and in accordance with the LDC.
Let me be on the record. Thank you for that testimony, Mr. Perez. I appreciate it. All right, Ms. Heinrich, do you have that answer of how many units would be left if the
Not yet. I'm trying to
251?
find, I'm sorry, not yet. I'm trying to find something in the record.
Okay. I think Mr. Smith has something. Oh, well, we might. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. This was the exhibit I was looking for. He was able to pull it up much faster than myself. He said according to their calculations with what's developed and what's proposed, there will be 439 units left.
Left, okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank
I appreciate it. All right, we'll go to the Planning Commission.
Carly Yanos with Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located within the urban service area, and it's not located within the limits of a community plan. The property has residential 4 future land use category, which can be considered for up to a density of 4 dwelling units per the gross acre and a maximum FAR of 0.25. The future land use category is intended for areas that are suitable for residential development. Typical uses are not limited to residential. They can be suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office uses, and multi-purpose projects. Of course, subject to locational criteria. The subject site abuts the neighborhood mixed use 4 future land use category to the north. To the west, south, and east is the residential 4 future land use category. To the northwest, there are public, quasi-public, and residential 6 future land use categories across Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Recreation and open space uses are currently existing on the subject site. The homeowner association, multifamily uses, single family, all about the sides of the subject site. The north inlet of the subject property is directly adjacent to a public institutional use, which is currently operating as the Hillsborough County Wastewater Treatment Plant. Predominant character of the surrounding area is residential in nature with a mixture of multifamily and single-family dwelling units interspersed throughout. Now, the subject site is surrounded by a planned development, a zoning district on all sides, and we do have some agricultural single-family, et cetera. The applicant is requesting a major modification, as we all know. Now, one of the major aspects of what Planning Commission staff reviewed for this application was the comprehensive plan policies in regards to minimum density. At the current moment, minimum density to be met would require the property to be developed with 75% or more of that future land use category, which requirement would be 499 dwelling units. The applicant is proposing 251, which is below that minimum requirement. However, policy 1.2 does allow for exemptions to that minimum density. So one of the exemptions is if you are compatible with the surrounding area or the development pattern, and as a result, this property does qualify for that. So in terms of compatibility, Planning Commission staff does find it consistent with the surrounding pattern that is currently in existence in the area. Now, the proposed lot size is slightly below. However, there is an average range between 6,700 square feet and 22,500 square feet minimum lot size in that area. However, with the overall consistency of compatibility and looking at how it's a gradual transition between uses, Planning Commission staff supports this and finds this consistent with the comprehensive plan policies. So overall, it is consistent with the goals, objectives, policies of unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and we'll be glad to answer any questions.
No questions at this time, but thank you for your testimony. All right, at this point, we'll go to people that would like to speak in support. I understand we have both people in the room and people that are participating virtually online. So if you remember from Ms. Hatley's original presentation, the code limits that testimony both for and against to 15 minutes. We have a little discretion if we have a large crowd, but we also have an agenda tonight to get through, so I can't let everybody go on for as long as they'd like to talk. Can you show me with a show of hands in the room how many people would like to speak in support? All right, so I count, hold your hand up. 3, 4, 5, 6, correct? Okay. Do we have anyone online that would like to testify in support? How many people? So that would be 7, 8, 9. Okay. All right. So Allison, 15 minutes. Let's just say we'll go with 2 minutes apiece. If you want to just put your name and address on the record and say you are testifying in support, that's more than fine. If someone has already presented your point, please feel free to do that. But if I could have all of you stand up and come line up, it speeds up the process rather than waiting for you to come one by one. We'll start with the people in the room unless you had a designated speaker you wanted to start with. But if you could come line up, it makes it go a little quicker. Yeah, absolutely. So Allison is requested, she's from the clerk's office at the end of the dais here. You're gonna have to sign in with your name and address. So if you wanna go ahead and while someone else is speaking, sign in, that will also speed things up. So whoever would like to speak first, go ahead and come up to the podium. Don't be shy, we're on a time constraint here. Okay. Your name and address, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Carol Claus. I live at 10,003 Cypress.
Pull this a little bit towards you. There you go. Perfect.
Live at
Thank
Cypress Shadow Avenue in Pebble Creek. I've lived there for about 17 years. I'm in favor of this development. Right now, our neighborhood looks horrible. It's not going to come back as a golf course. The county's already told us they're not going to purchase it as a park. They don't have it in their budget. We've had other builders in the past that were interested that came in looking to build 400 plus homes there. GL has listened to us. We've met with them several times. We've given them a lot of feedback, and they have adjusted their plan for what we wanted. Some of our major issues were protecting our wetlands. We want to keep the wildlife there. They are preserving all our wetlands. They are increasing the water ponds from 20 to like 37 acres. They're increasing it by 17 acres. Which is going to bring in more wildlife. They're going to plant 3,000 trees. They're giving our community 5 different park areas that we can share with the community, friends and family. You saw the picture of the dock going out over the water, benches, walkways, pedestrian path around the whole community, new entrances. There are things that we wouldn't get otherwise as a community, and we are an older community, and this is going to bring new life to our community. One thing that I want to say is that a lot of people are intimidated to speak up in favor. If you go to door and you actually talk to your neighbors, they are in favor of this. I did that just recently.
Please be respectful. We're not going to have that. Go ahead, ma'am.
So I've gone and this is what I was going to say. You get harassed. Just recently, all I said was posted online. We have a Facebook group with 809 members. There's 2 of them. And I said, be smart about this. Go to the GL meetings, ask your questions, and express your concerns. I had memes made of me using my full name, posted for people to see, and left up overnight. Then they were taken down the next morning because I realized they're bullying me. And they do that to everybody. If you're in favor of this and you say you're in favor of this, they attack you, they humiliate you, and it's not right.
Thank you for coming down. If you could please sign in with the clerk's
Sure,
office. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Beverly DeBoard, and I live at 189, pardon me, 18924 Fairwood Court, Tampa 33647. My husband and I had our house built 30 years ago, and we fully support the rezoning. We were the very first homeowners on our street. Our home was located right off the golf course, hole number 6. As such, we lived through all the other houses on our street being built. Never once were we bothered by dust, noise, or the heavy equipment. As has been stated, Pebble Creek is an aging community, and that is evident when driving through the streets. What GL Homes has proposed will bring us up to par with the newer surrounding communities and add new life to Pebble Creek. We look forward to and are excited by the proposal GL Homes has for us. In fact, we consider it an honor that GL has chosen our community in which to build their beautiful homes. Our home values will increase. GL will add more trees, ponds, additional amenities. This will most certainly add to the beauty of Pebble Creek and bring more interested buyers to our community. The majority of people who do not want the rezoning appear to be speaking from an emotional level. It does not appear they are considering the entire community, only their own perspective and backyard. In fact, if you ask them what their plan is if rezoning is not approved, they state they have no other plan than to protest and let the golf course go to weeds. Yet on the other hand, when it does go to weeds, they constantly call the county code enforcement complaining that the owner is not mowing or keeping the former golf course maintained. They can't have it both ways. Letting the course become overgrown invites homelessness, criminal activity, insects, snakes, and mice, which will invade surrounding homes, not to mention an extremely rundown appearance and diminished property value to all our homes. Please say yes to rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, please. You'd hold the applause, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Riley Langdon. I live at 9616 Foxhurst Road. Me and my wife are relatively new. We moved in October 2021. The community was presented to us by our realtor and the posting online as a golf course community with an open golf course. We moved from Colorado, so when we got here under contract, we found out that that was completely false and that this was never going to be reopened. I've actually met with Bill Place personally. As a veteran, I was able to sit down and talk to him. He's very respectful in his presentation to me and what his wishes were. Shortly after we got here, we joined a Facebook group and found out that about the rezoning. We were told to submit paperwork to several builders that we found out later, within a few days, never had any interest in the community. It was just a slander campaign against those other developers. Again, this group has been known to bully several people. I personally had posts removed and taken down or comments turned off when it doesn't go in favor of preventing the rezoning. We've toured some of the GL homes and looked at some of their developments. I believe it will add value. Moving here, I look at my house, as I did in Colorado, as an investment, and I look at ways that I can increase my investment, not reduce it. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. If you sign in if you hadn't already. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kay Warren Seiss. I live at 18528 Ambley Lane in Tampa. I found it interesting when he showed the beginning of Pebble Creek. I have been a homeowner there. I'm the original homeowner of my home, which was built in 1991. So I've been there over 32 years. And I love Pebble Creek community. It is a great community to live in. I know one of the complaints or opposals that I've heard, opposition to GL Homes building, is all the noise, all the dirt, all the construction, and having to deal with that. Having been there 32 years, there was maybe 5 homes on my street when I moved in. I could look out my window. I live in Ambley Lane, but I could see to Regents Park at Foxhurst and watch people come in. Major building happened after I was there, and I survived it. It's not a problem. Personally, I can see what GL, I've been to many of their presentations of what they have presented they're going to do for our community. I see that raising the value of my property. What I see if this land lies there vacant full of weeds and rundown buildings. It can do nothing but lower the value of my property. I fully support the rezoning and think it should be done.
Thank you for your time and testimony. I appreciate it. Is there anyone left in the room that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, first of all, for letting us have a say in this. My name is Linda Warnsice. I'm also at 18528 Ambley Lane, Tampa, Florida. I make my home with my sister. She's gracious enough to let me do that, and I do appreciate that. I hear a lot of buzz, a lot of misinformation, a lot of accusation, and I personally have been one of those that have not been attacked, but put back because I spoke out for GL Homes. When I went to vote, and I can't repeat what I was told, but they, Save Pebble Creek were out there asking us, requesting us to vote for certain people. It's neither here nor there, no one's business. But when I brought up my opinion and how I thought they were dead wrong, I was sworn at the gate of the voter booth before I went in to vote. And this is the kind of resistance that we who are trying to support the development of these homes is coming up with all the time. And we're just hearing things, too much traffic. What's the impact on the community going to be? It's going to raise the property values of the homes there. As far as the traffic in and out, it's been no problem. They had the same problem when they built the apartment buildings there, and there's no problem whatsoever. They're beautiful. So we need to get together as homeowners and support GL Homes, because my fear is if GL Homes, a great company, does not come in there, the property is still going to be for sale. And you're liable to get a lot worse in your backyard than a beautiful home, than a beautiful barrier, than somebody coming in that's going to put shrubbery and trees up to protect your view, if that is what you would wish. So please vote yes for rezoning.
Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. Anyone else in the room to speak? Seeing no one, we'll go to the folks online. I believe there were 3 people online. Whoever would like to go first. I don't have a particular order in front of me.
I can go first. This is Mike Jacobson, 18327 Cypress View Way. To me, this isn't a conversation about zoning or not zoning, but really a question of how to protect our home values. When the golf course stated its intent to close, I was actually the president of the Pebble Creek HOA. I personally sought out a conversation with the course owner, Bill Place, to ensure that if we couldn't find any alternative to development, that we would have a voice at the table to shape our future of our community. I wasn't supporting rezoning, but I was for ensuring that we always had a voice. With our conversations, we removed the multifamily dwellings, removed the multi-story homes behind residences, increased waterways, beautified entrances, and as you saw today in the presentation, there's much, much more. After a few years, there have been no viable alternatives that have been presented by those that have been against rezoning, except to leave the course vacant. It has become an eyesore of our community, negatively affecting all home values. I ask that you consider everyone that lives here, not just those adjacent to the course, to ensure that our aging community gets a strong infusion of life that it so desperately needs by allowing GL Homes to develop and put forth all the considerations they offered us. These considerations will bring great value to our aging community, directly increasing our property values. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Lance Ignatowicz. I live at 9804 Cypress Shadow Avenue. I live here in Pebble Creek with my wife and 2 sons. We support redevelopment 100%. We've had multiple meetings with GL Homes to address all of the concerns. GL Homes listened to us. They work closely with our family, friends, and neighbors to not only limit the number of homes that they're building, but they went out of their way to preserve all of the current wetlands. The opposition is claiming that they're doing this to save the wildlife in Pebble Creek. This plan that we agreed to with GL Homes does just that. That confirms in my mind what I knew all along, that the only thing the Save Pebble Creek people really want to do is save the view from their own backyards, leaving the other 1,200 homeowners stuck with an abandoned course, abandoned buildings locked behind a chain link fence to look at every time we enter or exit the property. Please help us really save Pebble Creek by voting yes to rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Can
time,
you
sir.
please restate
Next,
your
please.
name for the record?
Lance Ignatowicz.
Did you get it, Allison? Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Next, please. I don't, if someone's speaking, I believe you're muted. We'll have the people that have the man and the woman in the screen, let's hear from you. I'll pick. Go ahead, sir.
Jerry, can you hear us? Jerry, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a Vietnam veteran. I love my country. I love Pebble Creek. I've been here 25 years. I was a member of Pebble Creek Golf Course for 20 years. I was sad to see it go, but I'm even sadder to see what it looks like now. And I truly support what we're doing with GL Homes, and I say vote yes.
Sir, can you give us your name and address, please, for the record?
My name is Gerald C., spelled S-E-A-Y, 9925 Cypress Shadow.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that concludes your presentation or your testimony, correct?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Now we'll go to the lady in the red shirt.
I am on the opposition.
Ah, okay. Anyone else to speak in support? All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Seeing no one else in the room that would like to speak in support, we'll go to testimony in opposition. In the room, how many people, raise your hand if you would like to speak in opposition? Raise your hand high. I see one, I see two. Okay, thank you. And online, how many people would like to speak in opposition? So that would be two, and I see your hand. Okay, so 4. All right, so we'll do 3 minutes apiece. We'll do 4 minutes apiece just to make it fair. And we'll start with those in the room. The 2 in the room, if you could please go ahead and come forward, and whoever would like to start.
Good evening. My name is Fred Pierce. I live at 18919 Fairwood Court. And I would actually like Emma Zimbowski, who is the woman in the red in the...
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like her to go first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Emma Zimborski, and I reside in Pebble Creek at 9012 Hogan's Bend, Tampa, Florida. I oppose the rezoning of Pebble Creek Golf Course, and I was selected as one of the delegated speakers on behalf of those who also oppose rezoning. I have previously submitted all evidentiary documentation that supports what I am about to say, and I have also provided an additional binder tonight via hard copy. I find that this application is incomplete and missing information that is vital. It fails to provide the details regarding soil remediation from the State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection under the environmental section. This is not to be confused with the approval from the Hillsborough County EPC. Previously, this property was denied brownfield designation. However, it will still need extensive soil remediation. This requires a state-approved remedial action plan and a soil assessment report, both of which have yet to be approved by the state of Florida. There are still soil samples that must be submitted and approved, as well as a supplemental soil assessment report. I have grave concern for the safety of my family due to the fact that arsenic and dieldrin have been found in exponentially high numbers above the residential soil target levels. Furthermore, this development plan involves soil blending. Soil blending is taking contaminated soil and mixing it with new soil. Bob Sellers with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection has recommended not to do this on greens and tees. Despite being public record, these soil sample numbers were never provided to the people who live here, nor were they ever discussed. Project manager Scott Lakey with the soil remediation company ECS has previously stated that the contamination is currently contained to the property boundary. My biggest concern is in regard to when that soil is churned, exposed, and mixed with soil blending. After speaking with Dr. C. Wells professor at the University of South Florida and director of the Center for Brownfield Research and Redevelopment. Although arsenic is naturally occurring in Florida soil, dioxin is not and can potentially be airborne as well as water soluble. To put this into perspective, I live 30 feet from the property boundary and approximately 110 feet from the 10th hole green. Again, as previously mentioned per Mr. Scott Lakey, the course currently sits, it poses no threat. You know, the biggest slap in the face for me when my husband and I moved in was that we should have known better and that this wouldn't last forever and that there's no guarantees in life. Well, you know what? That person was right about one thing. There are absolutely no guarantees in life, and I do not believe that this development plan can guarantee that it will not result in significant adverse effects. How can this rezoning application be approved when the soil remediation plan has yet to be approved by the state of Florida? The fact that homes cannot be built until the soil remediation has been completed should not be ignored. I would also like to point out the letter regarding school capacity, which should not be neglected. Our schools are reaching capacity at distressing rates. And the fact that Wharton High School is currently at 93% capacity, could potentially reach 99 capacity, should be a red flag. Our children deserve the utmost attention and proper education in order to thrive. Having a school near max capacity does not provide an ideal learning environment, nor does it allow children to succeed. I would argue that not only would this put additional stress on our teachers, but it would also exacerbate the ongoing issues with bus driver availability in our area. The interests of education are of paramount importance, and this would be a profound disadvantage. Our children deserve better. Lastly, this plan is inconsistent and I believe not compatible with the surrounding community. These plans do not align with the comprehensive plan of unincorporated Hillsborough County. Our homes date back all the way to 1974. It's just shy of 50 years ago. For example, my home was one of the model homes, and the block I reside on was the first ever built. The remaining homes were built around the golf course for a reason, as planned developments are meant to be creative and mixed to ensure harmony for the land that was planned. Pebble Creek was uniquely designed to incorporate the golf course, and by eliminating this, you are removing the very thing that built the community. Moreover, building an additional 251 homes would not serve as an efficient use of the land, as this could potentially lead to urban sprawl and therefore would not be in alignment with the future land use plan. I would like to cite legal case law, Baum Road Investment LLC versus Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners, case number 2D21-1033, in which once a landowner meets his initial burden to prove consistency with the comprehensive plan and compliance with the application zoning ordinances, the burden shifts to the government to show that there is a legitimate public purpose behind maintaining the existing zoning classifications. Furthermore, the court has said that where there is a legitimate public purpose behind maintaining the existing zoning classification, a denial of rezoning is supported even if the requested rezoning was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Additionally, the appellate case of Pinellas County versus Richmond Group of Florida, Inc., case number 2D16-3279 has stated, whereas here citizens consistently come before their city council in public meetings on a number of occasions and present their individual fact-based concerns that are rationally related to legitimate general welfare concerns. It is not arbitrary and capricious for a city council to decide without a more formal investigation that those concerns are valid and that the proposed development should not be permitted.
Ma'am, if you could wrap it up, please, I'd appreciate it.
In closing, this is not about losing my backyard view. This is about the public health, safety, welfare, and overall quality of life that will not only affect myself, my husband, and my newborn daughter, but the entire community. I urge the zoning hearing master to consider the errors and suggest denial, as this application does not serve our neighborhood with integrity, but with malice. As the elected recording secretary of Pebble Creek Village Homeowners Association, I care about the people in this community, and although I do not speak for everyone, I do speak with grave concern for my fellow residents. Money should never supersede quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Did you have a preference for the next speaker? Please hold your applause, please. Please. All right, yes, ma'am. So we're going to take the next person inside in the room. Good evening.
My name is Leslie Green, 9014 Hogan's Bend. I also have a short statement by another resident that was registered. It's Dr. Paul Leverton. I was wondering if I could possibly read that for him. He could not be here.
You can read it into the record, but know that anything you submit into the record becomes a part of the record as well. So you're welcome to read it, but I will see it if you just want to submit it into the file.
Okay, it's very short. I'll just add it in at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Again, 9014 Hogan's Bend, Leslie Green. Pebble Creek is by far the densest subdivision in New Tampa. No one would build this way today, so filling in our only green space should not be an option. We have provided a thumb drive of pictures by resident photographer Larry Feldman to show you the multitude of native Florida wildlife we are blessed to have. We fear losing them to displacement during construction and out onto the heavily trafficked Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, as happened to deer during the building of the adjacent Live Oak community. Our large canopied 100-year-old live oak trees provide shade and desirable nesting spots for the many waterbirds and red-shouldered hawks. The proposed new palm trees would not. We have only 3 exits out of our neighborhood, and all are within a half of a mile of each other and onto the same road, Bruce B. Downs. Heavy traffic or a tragic accident could heed our leaving the neighborhood and increase response times for our already strained EMS. I'd like to point out that a strategic lawsuit against public participation was filed against me last April by the golf course owner in an attempt to silence me and others who might speak out against rezoning. With over 700 letters submitted to the public record, it is obviously not just residents with a view that are concerned. I believe that the next speaker is going to speak a little bit on those stats. It's about 3-to-1 opposed versus in favor. I believe the amount of letters would have been even greater. The letters of concern would have been even greater in numbers if the residents were not fearful of retaliation by the owner. I oppose rezoning of Pebble Creek Golf Course land that would change our lives forever. And now I'll read for you Dr. Paul Leverton.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Paul Leverton. He's at 9204 Regents Park Drive. Paul Leverton could not be with us tonight, but asked that I convey his major concern regarding the future of Pebble Creek Golf Course. And again, that is Professor Leverton. That is the health impact on our community. If this long-time green space disappears, once it is gone, it is gone. Dr. Leverton left the National Institutes of Health to join the USF faculty in 1985 and has lived in Pebble Creek since that time. His duties at NIH included responsibility for management of the Framingham Heart Study. He has long experience with assessing the causes of chronic disease and is a past president of the American Epidemiological Society. He wishes to point out that many epidemiologic studies on the loss of green space in urban areas have been linked to both physical and mental issues. The problem has only been recognized in recent years, but more and more studies each year are coming to the same conclusion. Green spaces are important to a community's health. He has sent summaries to most of you that are already part of public record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If you make sure you sign in as part of the record. Sir, are you planning to go next?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
And that's me.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening again. My name is Fred Pierce. My wife and Lisa and I have lived at 18919 Fairwood Court for the last 10 years. We purchased our home at a premium to live on the golf course. We opposed the rezoning of the golf course for housing development. We were among the last members of the Pebble Creek Golf Club. We love playing the course. We enjoy the camaraderie at Mulligan's. And Pebble Creek Golf Course is clearly the centerpiece of the community. Though golf is not a dying sport, as some would have us believe, the course can be killed and has been killed by withholding maintenance and proper irrigation, thereby driving members away. Ace Golf pointed out that in the late 90s, there were 300 paying members, full membership of the golf course. By the year the course closed in 2021, there were 17. I was one of them. We have worked with our neighbors, most of whom do not live on the course, and we've been accused of a small vocal minority, and tonight I heard that we're bullies, which kind of surprised me. We've been accused of opposing the golf course closure for capricious or silly reasons. My reason's clear. I live on the course, and I bought to be on the course, and I'm a golfer. To date, our records indicate that 716 letters have been received by your office regarding this matter, and that we believe that the total number was probably suppressed by the nasty and threatening letter that Ace Golf sent to Pebble Creek residents in February 23, and the slap lawsuit filed by Mr. Place against our colleague, Ms. Green, who just spoke. If one counts all the letters which are duplicates, there are 505 letters opposed to redevelopment, 71%, and 211 supporting development, that's 29%. However, if you discount the duplicate letters for both for and against, the ratio changed to 74 against and 26 for. So we're talking about over 505 people. It's not a small minority. And our resources were quite limited. So I looked at, I've looked at GL Homes' application. It's a marvelous piece of engineering in itself. The appendices are great. And if you look at all the heavy firepower they've put behind all these meetings and door hangers and so on and so forth, I'm surprised that they didn't have greater numbers. So here we were, we're being told that people wouldn't talk to us or support us because we're being bullied, yet the numbers seem to suggest that 74% of the minority, the majority of Pebble Creek homeowners are against this rezoning. I've read the GL application, and I echo my colleague Emma, who I also believe it's missing some information. Typically, it would be. And, you know, I looked at some of the letters. There are marvelous letters in there. My favorite is from a fictitious Donald Keddick, who resides at a house that does not exist on Cypress Shadow, and he wanted to make sure that you guys insisted that the mob of eco-tourists, terrorists, were basically eliminated from attacking the 1,000 residents who spoke out for pro-development. Despite all our differences, one of the things I've kind of been impressed here is that we've got differences of opinion about the future of the community, but both sides are very interested in rehabilitating the community. We believe the golf course is the best way to do that. I don't understand how decreasing scarcity will increase housing prices. But I'm just a retired USF professor, so I'm not as smart as a lot of people. But I think basically what we're doing here is attempting to, as Blanche Dubois said in Streetcar Named Desire, we're relying on the kindness of strangers. So I'm very clear that I am against the rezoning, but I'm very impressed that this hearing has been very straightforward. We will continue to do what we can to maintain our position. But the nice thing about living in a democracy is that ultimately a decision is made, and it should be made on civil and reasoned discourse. And that's what I heard here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. I believe we have one more person online to speak in opposition. Is that correct? Good evening.
I'm sorry. Good evening. I'm Dorothy Zebarth. I live at 18314 Sturbridge Court. And I have to say, first of all, I have not been involved in any of the meetings or anything else, but I have heard some of the accusations of bullying that has gone on around this issue, and I absolutely deplore it. I also want to say that I think the developer has put out a really very, very nice plan that I think would enhance the neighborhood for sure. I was one of the people like the gentleman from Colorado who bought in back a year ago, February, and we were under the impression when we went under contract that this was a golf course community. We are very avid golf fans, and we were both very excited. Well, guess what? You know, we understand that didn't quite happen, and you know, we understand why. But what I really came to talk about tonight very quickly, and I will not bore you, because at 6:45 in the morning of April 25th, my husband and I were almost killed. We were on foot crossing at the four-way stop intersection of Pebble Creek Drive and Regency Park Drive. That is on the south side of Regent Park Drive, which one of the gentlemen earlier alluded to. We saw a vehicle approach from the east and naively assumed he would stop at the stop sign and allow us to cross since we were in the middle of the street. He didn't even slow down. Instead, he sped up and missed hitting my husband by literally 6 inches and me by about a foot. While there are obviously other issues involved here, there's one issue that is critical, and that is the issue of traffic on South Regent Park Drive. My understanding is that this application before you proposes to develop potentially 250 more homes in Pebble Creek. Assuming that most of these homes would potentially house 2 adults, each owning a personal vehicle, the number of vehicles traveling in and out of the 3 egresses from Pebble Creek to 581 would potentially increase to close to 500 vehicles. Unfortunately, my perception is most vehicles tend to use the south entrance onto 581 because it heads to Tampa. It's the most direct. You don't have to stop at any of the other lights on 581 at Pebble Creek Drive, you know, and then south if you were to access any other entrance onto 581, you'd be stuck at least with one more stoplight to navigate in a very, very congested area, particularly in the mornings. So with that increased volume of traffic, I sincerely believe it will be just a matter of time before our very personal near miss with traffic will become a tragedy. We have actually stopped other cars when we saw them coming at that intersection that were not slowing down, and you know, I did a hand out thing as we were walking and they just barely stopped. This one didn't stop. I think we have a tragedy waiting to happen. And I thank you so very much for the opportunity for, as the gentleman before me said, a very civil discourse. I again deplore any of the bullying that has gone around this. It seems to be a symptom of our bigger culture in this country. Very sad to say. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. I really appreciate it. All right, seeing no one else to testify in opposition, we'll close that portion of the hearing. And at this time, we'll go back to Development Services. Ms. Heinrich, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, then we'll go back to the applicant, who has 5 minutes for rebuttal. Because both opposition, I let that go a little bit past the code prescribed times, I'll give you a little extra time if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Jake Kramer will try to be quick. Just so you know, I'm going to present several experts. I do have one expert online, and
Okay.
I'll let you know when that comes.
Thank you.
If I can use the Elmo. So I want to address the last woman's comment about the intersection of Pebble Creek and South Regents Drive. So our access is up here on North Regents Drive. She's speaking of the intersection down here of Pebble Creek and South Regents Drive. As we indicated earlier, our access is up here. Basically a collector road. Somebody would have to leave, turn right, go around the entire project to then get up to Pebble Creek to go south, or Regents to go south. The reality is, why would anybody go that far out of their way to get there? And then also, real quickly, just to give you an idea, this is the North Regents Drive intersection at 581, 4 lanes. This is Pebble Creek and 581, 2 lanes. This is South Regents and 2 lanes. So again, you'd have to go way out of your way, and you're going to a intersection that has less geometry. So the reality is, nobody's going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would ask for a bottle.
No, sir. No, nothing from the audience, please. Go ahead, sir. Good evening.
My name is Brian Moore. Address 5904 Hampton Oaks Parkway, Suite F, Tampa 33610. I'm with GHD. I'm an environmental engineer. I've been practicing engineering here in Florida for over 25 years. I've worked on many similar projects to this one. As with any agricultural or golf course use, pesticides and herbicides are applied as part of the maintenance of properties like that. So anytime you have a shift in land use from agricultural to residential or multifamily, you go through the process of mitigating those chemicals that might have been applied to the ground and accumulate. This particular site is under that process with the DEP. I've kind of been looking over ECS's shoulders, seeing their interactions with the state. The process in general is prescribed by 62780 Florida Administrative Code. It's a two-step process. The first step is the assessment. The second step is the actual rehabilitation, which may mean cleanup. It may mean controlling what might be in the environment. So just a comment on that. This process is moving along, and it's very consistent with the state standards, and they're very much involved.
Let me ask you a question before you leave the podium. You heard the first speaker in opposition talk about the lack of the soil remediation approval. One, is that true? Has that plan been approved yet?
Yeah, the plan has not been approved yet.
And what is the typical time frame? I understand you testified that that process has started. What is the typical time frame for that being that plan being approved?
So, as I mentioned, it's a two-step process. Assessment is the first step. It typically takes a long time to get through the assessment, trying to identify how far, how deep, things like that. It's just one sample after another. But once you get through that, the plan is required to be submitted within 90 days of the assessment approval, and it's typically approved within 30 or 60 days of that.
And obviously, nothing could proceed further in terms of development without all of those plan approvals and the actual remediation to be completed. Is that correct?
Well, typically that's how it's done, but the department will work with you, and they are willing to, do things in the interim if development needs to move along. But in this case, that hasn't come up yet. So we would expect it to follow the typical process with approval and then development.
All right. Thank you for that testimony. I appreciate it.
Again, Stephen Spizzato, planner, Level Up Consulting. Actually, I lost Tom's face there. So I'm going to just briefly address the comment about the golf course being the heart of the community. If you look at the site plan, you look at sort of the frame of the property, and along the northeast corner, for example, you have those two sort of projections that go out. Those are currently golf holes, and if you kind of follow all the way around the edge of the community, except for a wetland in the northwest corner, those golf holes sort of follow the form of that line. And so, what we're doing is we're basically replacing an active recreational use with more of a passive feature, which is the pond. And so that, in my mind, the heart really is of this property is the central wetland feature that also includes Pebble Creek. And so if you look at the concept plan, that feature is maintained. The preservation of those wetlands are maintained. So basically we're replacing some again, those active fairways, those kind of things with more passive features.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay Kramer again. I'll wrap up here quickly. I'm entering into the record a number of new support letters that we received over the weekend. I'm also making sure that there's over 120 record letters of support that we've received, so I'm submitting those as well to make sure they're in the record. I've also placed into the record a copy of a number of covenants that are on parts of the surrounding community. If I can go to the Elmo, please. Thank you. And I place this map into the record just so you can understand that there is a covenant on the lands that are colored, as well as parcel H. There's a covenant for those particular parcels that explicitly disclaimed any potential future land use changes that the developer or the landowner might choose to change to in the future. Now that doesn't apply to each and every parcel within Pebble Creek, but as you can see, it does cover the vast majority of the Pebble Creek neighborhood. I did want to mention, based on a couple of comments that we heard from opposition, that there's reports in the record, number one, that describes in detail how golf is not feasible on this particular property. There's also a report on land values on golf course redevelopments in Florida, where they studied a number of golf courses and showed that once redevelopment starts, that the properties surrounding the golf courses tend to increase by over 6% compared to the zip code as a whole. So it doesn't negatively impact property values. There was a comment about there was a comment from someone in the opposition about the legal standard to apply here. There's a memo also in the binder explaining, I'm sure you're very familiar with this. I just did want to point out that what the legal standard actually is once staff recommends approval, then that means the burden shifts to the opposition. And they have to show through competent substantial evidence that the current existing land use on the property is reasonable. And there's no expert testimony in the record that would support that. Finally, staff asked me to clarify that when I said there would be no rentals, that comment was that we're the developer, we only control initially that there would not be rentals. So in other words, this is not a build to rent community. And with that, I would just point you back to our slide showing that we started with community engagement on day one. We spent a year doing that, and all of that's what led us to our plan that we have today. So with that, we ask for your recommendation of approval, and again, our team is here and online if you have any questions.
No further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll close major modification 23-0132, and I'll turn the hearing back to Hearing Master Hadley. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break while the room clears, and we'll reconvene at, we'll say 8:15, no later than 8:15.
Bye, and Leslie!
Okay. All right, if you could please come on in and take your seats, we'll reconvene. All right, thank you. All right, we'll continue then the zoning hearing master meeting for May 15th, 2023. I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I'm your hearing master, and I believe we're ready to call the next case.
Our next item is item D4, PD application 22-1640. This is a request to rezone property to planned development. Israel Monsanto with Development Services will provide staff comments after presentation by the applicant.
Good evening, Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller. As a housekeeping matter, we do have some information to submit into the record, both the resumes and an affidavit to authorize agent that we've been asked to provide.
All right, thank you.
So, Madam Hearing Officer, this is the redevelopment of the University Mall, but this project has been approved, and we're here today to fill the hole in the donut, and I'll talk a little bit about that. As you are well aware, this is the former University Mall, which is approximately 90.53 acres. It is located on the north of Fowler Avenue, which is actually, the lower portion is in the city of Tampa, but the majority of the development is in the county. It is in the University Area Community Planning Area and the University Regional Activity Center. So the current zoning of the property, the big green area, is the current PD. That is what we initially rezoned back in 2019 with a couple of subsequent PRSs. The area that you can see here in red, that is a piece that was owned by Burlington Coat Factory, and it was not controlled by the developer at the time that we went through the original rezoning. So the main purpose of this is to bring that Burlington property into the PD with substantially the same conditions, et cetera. This is, of course, the prior history. So we did go through and create a new category, a new comprehensive plan category specifically for this development. It was ICMU 35, and it was supposed to facilitate the redevelopment of this mall consistent with the surrounding area. We worked very hard with staff through that entire process to develop a design book and then to take those design guidelines, particularly working with the Planning Commission, and reduce those to a number of conditions that ensured an urban form of development, walkability on the site, et cetera. In fact, there's a tiered height, so the further in you get, you create that urban core. As I mentioned, this request is literally just to bring Burlington into the site. We already contemplated Burlington coming in. If you look at the rezoning, you'll see that there's a street grid and blocks developed, particularly contemplating that we would bring this property in at some point into the future, integrating it into the overall parcel. Really, we're here just to fill that hole in the donut so that the entire redevelopment can occur. We do have planning staff and planning commission support, and we're here to answer any questions. Transportation is here, our civil engineers, and myself. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I've reviewed the file and really don't have any questions about it, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Development Services.
Good evening. Israel Monsanto Development Services. The applicant seeks to rezone a site containing multiple parcels from planned development 191443 and 740214, and also from commercial general to a new planned development. The site is occupied by the University Mall, as the applicant stated, which is undergoing redevelopment into a new mixed-use development and is located on the north side of Fowler Avenue, west of Bruce B. Downs Boulevard in Tampa. The parcels on PD 1443 is approved for commercial general, residential, and office uses, and consists of an urban mixed-use project with up to 2.0 FAR, 35 dwelling units per the acre, and allows use of FAR in lieu of density for residential projects at the developer's option. The PD has a total of 12 internal street typologies accommodating vehicular and pedestrian traffic, and also includes 15 development blocks. It also regulates building design and block development standards per street type. The PD implements the Innovation Corridor Mixed Use, ICMU 35, Future Land Use category. PD 740214 is approved for commercial general uses and parking areas and is known as the Burlington Code property. PD 191443 does not include the 6.6 acre for the Burlington Code factory property and approximately 0.68 acres of out parcels along Fowler Avenue. These are in the city of Tampa city limits. And the Burlington Code factory property recently received board approval for a comprehensive plan amendment, 22-21, to change from residential 20 and UMU 20 to the new ICMU 35 future land use designation. Through this new PD, as the applicant stated, this Burlington property will be integrated into the existing plan development with the rest of the mall property under the same conditions as a unified development, with the addition of a parcel into an existing plan development, enlarging its total land area. A new PD district and rezoning application is required per the Land Development Code. The new property added to the project creates a new block labeled 4A within the PD. This new block was already contemplated as part of the original plan development design and layout during the rezoning and development plan for PD 191443 to ensure that its future integration will transition properly into this mixed urban project. The applicant is not requesting any new PD variations. However, since this is a new PD application, the 3 variations included as part of this rezoning application are identical to the variations previously approved by Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners during PD 191443 and also PRS 220028. The applicant states that buffers internal to the site are being eliminated in order to properly integrate the mixed-use project. This allows an innovative design and encouragement of walkable mixed-use project, and this allows also to cluster the uses and facilitate walkability. Appropriate setbacks and buffers will be provided for development that abuts the perimeter of the PD and off-site uses. The waiver eliminates, a waiver request also eliminates the 2 additional feet of building setbacks for each additional foot of height over 20 feet, and this is also needed to allow the vertical integration of uses in this project. Again, the site will be a mixed-use activity center, which is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the Land Development Code, as well as with the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Staff does not find any compatibility issues with the proposed PD request and finds the request PD variation submitted per LDC Section 50306C6 meets the criteria for approval. The addition of the subject parcel to the overall PD is consistent with the initial rezoning application in 2019, also with the conditions of approvals and PD plan. And as such, the same conditions from PD 191443 are being also proposed for this new PD district. Transportation staff has reviewed the request with no objections, and the Planning Commission found the new plan development request consistent with the future of Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. The subject parcel was contemplated to be part of the mixed-use project as a future site. Therefore, through this new PD request, this land is now being fully integrated into the urban mixed-use project. And based on these factors, staff recommends approval with the conditions. And we are available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. All right, Planning Commission.
The subject site is located within the urban service area and within the limits of the University Area Community Plan. The property is located within the Innovation Corridor Mixed Use 35 Future Land Use category, which can be considered for up to a density of 35 dwelling units or a maximum intensity of 2.0 FAR. The intent of the ICMU 35 Future Land Use category is to form a regional activity centers that incorporate internal roadway systems, building clustering, and mixing of uses. Again, typical uses in the ICMU 35 include residential, regional scale, retail, commercial, office uses, business park uses, biomedical research, institutional, hospitals, research, corporate parks, etc. Projects will be developed generally consistent with the policies of Objective 19, with the exception of the acreage threshold. Now, residential 20 future land use category is located to the north, northeast, northwest, and east of the subject site. Residential 6, office commercial 20, regional mixed use 35 categories are also located to the east. Res 20 and OC 20 future land use categories are located to the west of the property. Properties south of the subject site are within the limits of the city of Tampa, and they are designated community commercial 35, CC 35. The applicant, again, is requesting to rezone the subject site from commercial general to planned development. This planned development will allow for a consideration of a mixed-use bonus incentives that would permit an additional 0.50 FAR and up to 50 dwelling units per the acre. The subject site is not subject to locational criteria. They are requesting proposed development to permit limited or specified uses. The general surrounding area is characterized by a suburban development pattern, so Planning Commission staff found the proposed uses are consistent with the surrounding area. There are a great number of projects that are redeveloping to higher densities in that area as well. Building heights on this project are restricted to a maximum of 300 feet. No building shall exceed within 100 feet or 60 feet of the site boundaries. So Planning Commission staff did review for mitigation on the subject site, and we have found no conflicts with the comprehensive plan. Now on January 25th, Planning Commission staff did issue an inconsistency finding on the PRS under 22-0028 to a plan development. However, the Board of County Commissioners has approved the item. So the request is consistent based on that. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, subject to the conditions of the approval requiring for the cross connections to adjacent parcels that can be redeveloped in the future. Now, the project will need to provide a perpetual public access mechanism that runs with the land and effectuates the public's ability to traverse the site and runs from east to west on one of the roadways provided on the site plan. So based upon those considerations, the Planning Commission staff finds that the proposed plan development is consistent with the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. It meets the mixed use of, and interconnectivity requirements of the comprehensive plan, and it also meets access management requirements of goals 15 and objective 15, the community design component concerning connectivity. It does meet the vision and intent of the university area community plan through the provision of landscaping and other buffering items. It does meet the vision and intent of, again, the university area community plan with the provision of providing a minimum of 10% of open space and a main square and civic space for at least 0.5 acres in the size within the central district. So with that being said, it's being found consistent, and staff will be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? Do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
The only thing I wanted to state is the future land use category that you've been hearing from the staff and the applicant is correct. It's ICMU 35. It's incorrectly noted in our agenda.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to the applicant then. All right, thank you. Nothing further from the applicant. That will close the hearing on rezoning PD 22-1640. Next case.
Our next item is D5. This is rezoning to PD 22-1703. I've reviewed this for Development Services and will provide staff findings after the applicant's presentation.
All right, thank you, applicant.
Thank you. Thank you for our technical difficulties. Rebecca Kurt with Brooks and Rocha at 400 North Tampa Street, Suite 1910. And we are here tonight on PD 22-1703. I am honored to be here tonight representing the applicant, Wide Waters Group, and we have Marco Marzocchi, Director of Development. I also have with me Michael Brooks, who is my co-land use counsel for transportation. We have Michael Yates. Our civil engineer is Todd Amadin. This is a rezoning for 4 parcels. 2 of them are from PD 050809 as it has been amended, and 2 parcels comprise PD 20-0447. The request is for planned development for 280 multifamily units. We also have a companion PRS that is not before you tonight that will remove 2 parcels, 2 of the parcels that we are incorporating from an existing PD. As you can see, this is a general location map. It's approximately 16 acres along I-75 between MLK and State Road 60. It is within the urban service area and will be served by public water and sewer. It is outside of the coastal high hazard area and within the Brandon Community Plan area, and the Planning Commission has found us consistent with that community plan. This is an aerial of the site. It is the area outlined in red. It is predominantly vacant. We do have an existing billboard, which we have a condition proposed by staff that we agree to. That I will talk about in a minute. There are also some residential and accessory structures on this that will be removed. To the north of this project, we have a very large retention area and multifamily. To the south, we have single family. To the east, you have a PD with approved townhomes, and the townhome project is in permitting currently. To the west, you have Interstate 75, and further west from that, you have commercial and industrial. As you can see here, this is a future land use map. We have 2 land use designations on this PD. One is UMU 20 and one is R6. We are requesting to flex the UMU 20 on the western site over to the RS6. The board has previously approved the same flex in connection with PD 050809 and has reapproved it in each subsequent amendment of that as recently as 2022. The flex will facilitate development of the multifamily project, which will provide for a transition between I-75 and the townhome project. In addition, it adds to the range of uses along the I-75 corridor, which is consistent with your comprehensive plan. The red area to the left of your screen is the existing PD 20-0447. There are 2 parcels in there. It is approved currently for 80,000 square feet of self-storage and an existing single-family residential and agricultural uses. The PD 050809, which is outlined in yellow before you, if you look to the graphic on the left, it helps to clarify what we're attempting to do here. So the area that is showing up peach on your screen is the area that is going to be removed and incorporated into the new PD. The blue area is the area that will remain, and that Tract A, which I will talk about a little bit in the future, is going to remain as part of the existing PD, but will have no density entitlements. It will allow the existing flex on the 05 PD to remain in existence. It is currently approved for 195 unit townhomes, and again, it is in permitting for 94 units. This is our site plan, an overview of our site plan. We've divided it kind of in the north and the south because the northern portion of the project is where the multifamily is going to be located. The red dot is our existing billboard, and there is a condition 1.2 in the staff report which acknowledges that that billboard was appropriately approved through the settlement agreements, and any further things that happen with that, be relocated or reconstructed, will be pursuant to the settlement agreements. To the south of the project, we have large wetlands, we have stormwater, floodplain compensation, and passive recreation. Also to the north of the site, we have our community gathering space, which is kind of that in the general area of that circle in the middle. Again, Tract A, which is 0.6 acres, condition 1.1 states that this project may be jointly developed with Tract A. As I mentioned earlier, It is remaining in the existing PD, but it has new density entitlements within that PD. So it will be able to be jointly developed with this new PD, but it will be limited to stormwater, floodplain compensation, passive recreation, and if needed, access to the south. This site shows the multifamily layout. So the dotted line is basically showing our internal circulation. The blue area outside of that defines a perimeter parking and garage areas, and internal to that will be our primary building envelope. For the multifamily structures, we have a maximum height of 50 feet with some fairly significant setbacks, 60 feet to the north, 70 feet to the east, 650 feet to the south, which is where the single family is, and 65 feet to the west. And we did want to note that we are not doing an additional 2-to-1 setback above 20 feet. And we talked to staff, and they agree, and it's stated in their staff report, that the 70 feet meets that standard. So we're not doing an additional 2-to-1 above that. We just wanted to clarify that. So this slide is for the accessory structures, the parking garages, and that will have a maximum height of 20 feet with still some fairly significant setbacks as stated on the slide. Buffers and screening, I'm going to start from the south. We have a 20-foot buffer where we will be retaining the existing vegetation. To the east is an 8-foot buffer, type A, in compliance with code. To the north, we're doing an 8-foot right-of-way buffer, and no other buffer is required at that area. And to the west, it's a 25-foot buffer with a masonry wall or fencing. And on the next screen, the one variation that we are requesting is for LDC section 60606, which is screening for areas of excessive traffic or noise. So it's basically screening that's required for the benefit of the people who live in this multifamily project from the noise of I-75. There is, along the western portion, a 30-foot gas pipeline easement with an existing pipeline, so we cannot plant the trees as required on the Type B landscaping. So we are proposing as an alternative to do a 6-foot masonry wall or solid wooden or PV fence with the allowance that for the garage structures to serve as that same sort of screening along that western boundary, and staff has no objections to that request. At this point, we're going to talk about the design exception. I'm going to ask Michael Yates to come up and discuss that.
Good evening. Michael Yates with Palm Traffic, and I have been sworn. Just wanted to go through the design exception on this. We do have a design exception for Graves Road. Our access is at the southern end of the Graves Road. There it's segment C. We have 2 access points. We did intersection analysis. We did a full transportation analysis and showed the driveways operate at acceptable level of service, and Graves Road operates at acceptable level of service. With the proposed project and the approved project to the east of us. And Graves Road does end immediately to the east of that. And so based on the Hillsborough County standards, Graves Road is considered a substandard road. Let's see if I got this. And so there was a previous approved design exception for Graves Road of these 3 segments. We provide the PI number for that. That design exception has been approved, not just found approvable, but approved as part of the project to our east. And so what we've shown is the 3 segments, with segment A being the northern segment, segment B being the north-south segment, which is a DOT roadway component there, and then the southern segment C, which is in front of our site. And so the black is the road segment that was approved under the previous design exception, and the red represents the changes to that approved design exception to accommodate this traffic. And so essentially what we are providing is a 10-foot multi-use path along our frontage and along the north-south frontage. And because of limited right-of-way along the northern segment, we are providing a 5-foot sidewalk that will connect to the existing sidewalk along Broadway Center Boulevard. And so that will provide continuous sidewalk connectivity through there. The design exception has been found approvable by the county engineer. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you.
So again, we do have a companion PRS 230033, and while that is not before you tonight, we did just want to touch base on that, try and explain basically how we ended up where we ended up with the PD that we have. So the existing PD is shown to the left. The red is the UMU 20. The green is the flex from the CMU 12, and the rest is Res 6. As you know, if you're going to remove anything from an existing PD, you need to make sure that you leave the parcels that are still remaining in the PD whole in the same situation that they would be. And so to be able to effectuate that, we added back in Tract A with no development or entitlement density rights. And that allows that existing UM 20 flex to remain just where it was. You have the same CMU 12 flex from the north, and the remainder remains the Res 6, which leaves you with 9 dwelling units an acre, 104 single-family attached units, and that is consistent with what was previously approved. With that, I'd just like to conclude by saying that we have demonstrated that it's compatible with the surrounding land use pattern. We have mitigated for the single family to the south by the large setbacks and the wetlands that are in existence. The flexes are consistent with a comprehensive plan. We have one variation that is for the benefit of the future residents of our PD, and we have justified the alternative that we are proposing. Development Services has recommended approval, and the Planning Commission staff has found it consistent. We do agree with the conditions of approval and the certification notes, and we respectfully request your positive recommendation. I'm available if there are any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Development Services. Hello, Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. As you heard, the applicant requests to rezone parcels currently zoned PD 20-0447 and PD 05-0809 to PD 22-1703 to permit a 280-unit multifamily development, and that will be a density of 17 units per acre. To achieve this density, a flex of the UMU 20 future land use category found to the immediate west is proposed, and the site is located within the Brandon community and to the immediate east of I-75. As you saw in the applicant's presentation, development is limited to the northern area of the project adjacent to Graves Road. Multifamily uses are found to the immediate north and east of the site. The area to the north is developed with a stormwater pond and separated from the site by Graves Road. The area to the east is approved for townhomes, and the subject property will comply with the 2-to-1 setback due to height along this boundary. Existing wetlands and pond areas to the rear will provide significant separation from single-family uses found to the south. As you heard tonight, there is one PD variation requested, and that has to do with the buffering for against excessive traffic or noise. And as the applicant correctly stated, they are proposing an alternative treatment, I should say. They're going to have a 25-foot buffer and provide within that buffer a 6-foot high masonry wall, solid wood fence, or solid PVC fence. And staff does not have any objections to that request. Staff received a finding of consistency from the Planning Commission, and no objections from reviewing agencies were received. Therefore, we do recommend approval subject to proposed conditions. And I did want to note that a revised staff report was provided to you prior to the start of the hearing tonight. And the purpose of that was the proposed buffering and screening at the beginning of the report has been revised to specify what is actually going to be provided along the western, eastern, and southern PD boundaries. And also, as you heard from the applicant, condition 1.2 has been added, which speaks to an existing billboard on the site. And lastly, as noted by the applicant, there is a companion PRS to this application, and both will be heard together at the July BOCC land use meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Planning Commission?
The subject site is located within the urban service area, and it's located within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan. It's also within the suburban character district of the Brandon Community Plan. Subject site contains 2 future land use categories. The western portion is within the urban mixed use 20, which can be considered for up to a maximum density of 20 dwelling units to the gross acre, or a maximum intensity of 1.0 FAR. The other land use category is considered, the eastern portion of the subject site is located within the residential 6 future land use category. And this can be considered for a density up to 6 dwelling units per the gross acre or a maximum intensity of 0.25 FAR. Now, to the south and to the west is the UMU 20 future land use category. To the east is the Res 6 or Residential 6 future land use category. To the north is Community Mixed Use 12. Further southeast and west is Public Quasi-Public. To the north of the property is multifamily residential. To the south and east is single-family residential with vacant properties. In addition, to the east, agricultural land is found. Southeast of the property is an elementary school, Smitch Elementary School to be exact. To the west is across Interstate 75 are light industrial and light commercial single-family residential, vacant land, public utilities, and heavy industrial properties. Now, the applicant is proposing to use a flex provision as outlined in Flu Policy 7.3. They are requesting to flex 322 feet of the urban mixed-use 20 located to the west over a portion of the subject site, which is designated as Res 6. The applicant has stated a similar flex has been approved as part of their 3 prior zoning applications. The flex is in the urban service area. It is not within a coastal high hazard area. It extends parallel and is 500 linear feet and is not an extension of an existing flex. There is an adjacent PRS for this PD, as you've seen in the staff report and per what the applicant has stated, as well as development services staff. The PRS is requesting to remove the 2 parcels from that plan development. With all that being said, currently, with the removing of the 2 parcels and the application of the flex, it's actually a reduction in the flex request. And it's to ensure that 107 unit entitlements for that PD basically are going to be valid. The 0.94 acres in the UMU 20 allows 18, 7.41 acres in the Res 6 allow 44, and 3.8 acres in the CMU 12 allows 45. So that's the breakdown of the units. Approval of this PD is dependent upon that approval of that PRS. This is a reduction in the already approved flex. The proposal meets the intent of the future land use element and all of the objectives for consideration of infill development as well. And it's also consistent with the character of the suburban character district for the Brandon Community Plan. Overall, the proposed rezoning would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Again, the rezoning request is compatible with the existing development area and the flex policies as well.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application?
Group is present in the room. Jake, if you please would like to add some information.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Karen Jackson Sims. I am the senior pastor of Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church of Riverview, Florida.
Ma'am, could you also please just state your address?
I reside at 12017 Timber Hill Drive in Riverview, Florida. I am also an AICP member. We want you to know and the staff to know that we have no concerns whatsoever with the conditions that have been placed upon the rezone request. We find them to be reasonable and are in agreement with everything that the staff has indicated. Therefore, we prayerfully request that you as hearing master forward this on with a positive recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, thank you very much.
And I'll be very brief. I'm Jake Zunneman, Senior Vice President of Development with Smith and Hensey Affordable Group. I live at 6530 Southwest 47th Street, Miami, Florida. It's been a pleasure working with county staff. Hillsborough County has awarded this specific development roughly $6.8 million to help get off the ground, and it's been fantastic to work with Hillsborough County staff and other officials, and We're just very fortunate to be joint venture development partners with Pastor Karen and the Mount Zion AME Church. So we're here to answer any questions, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And please be sure and sign in. Thank you. Development Services?
Good afternoon, Tanya Chapela, Development Services. This is a rezoning application 23-0085. The applicant is proposing to rezone from agricultural single-family 1 to planned development to allow a housing for older persons, multifamily development, consisting of a maximum of 75 apartment dwelling units and a 150 seats church and ancillary uses. An affordable housing density bonus was requested to increase from 20 to 35 dwelling units per acre, and a waiver to the Land Development Code, Section 60101 and Note 8, height restrictions, which requires an additional 2 feet of setback for each foot of structure height over 20 feet. The surrounding properties to the north, east, and west are Zone PD and are approved for multifamily uses with a maximum density of 20 dwelling units per acre. The proposed residential use is comparable to the adjacent multifamily developments and commercial development to the south. The proposed affordable housing density bonus allows up to 33.36 dwelling units per acre, which is exceeding the UMU20 future land use category 20 dwelling units per acre maximum density, and is surpassing the surrounding existing density pattern. However, the proposed 62 plus age restrictions will not add to the existing school capacity, and furthermore, the existing church 0.36 FAR will remain under the 0.75 maximum FAR allowable in the UMU20 comprehensive plan category. The proposed building area will intrude into the required east side setbacks. However, there's no changes to the regulations in the other front, rear, and west setbacks. And overall, the project will not create a significant change in the visual character of the area. Also, I need to explain that at the end of the review, the applicant team and myself were discussing details on lot development standards. So we needed to accommodate the 2 lots. So they're planning to divide the land in 2 lots. So there is a portion of the property to the south where the church exists currently. So they want to split the lot. So I needed to add to the conditions a section for the church, which is different to the residential area. So this happened after the site development revised site plan deadline. And I accepted a site plan after that deadline. However, I don't think that was correct. So at this point, what I think is the best practice is to add to the conditions of approval prior to certification to include those items in the final site plan. Any of those items are requiring any extra waiver or variations is just to specify the setbacks to the north and west of the church area to the south, if that.
Okay, just let me make sure I follow you. I mean,
okay, go ahead.
So the piece of that that's relevant to my work then, you're adding conditions of approval, and you've already done that. They're in the staff report, is that correct?
It is correct, yes.
Okay, and they have to do with the site plan that you received after the deadline. And so essentially those conditions have been met with that site plan, is that?
With the new one after, so
Okay. So we're requiring them, but it's already been done, or they've complied with that?
It is done, yeah, but
Okay.
we still need them to provide a new site plan.
Okay.
At the end, we always require a site plan for certification.
Yes.
With those conditions.
Okay. But those requirements, in other words, are in the conditions now when I review
They are,
this?
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
No problem.
Appreciate that. All right, Planning Commission, please.
The subject site is located in the urban service area. It is within the limits of the Brandon Community Plan, specifically in the urban general district on the Brandon Character Districts map. The subject site is designated as the urban mixed-use 20 on the future land use map. It typically allows residential, regional scale commercial uses, offices, research corporate parks, etc. This allows you up to 20 dwelling units the acre. Also, in addition, UMU 20 does surround the entire subject site on the north, east, and west. South of the site is the Community Mixed Use 12 designation. Further northwest of the site is public, quasi-public. And further east is a suburban mixed use 6 future land use category. Multifamily residential surrounds the site on the north, east, and west, as previously mentioned. South across West Bloomingdale Avenue is a public institutional use, and there are also light and heavy commercial uses. Now, the applicant, again, is requesting the rezoning from the ASC 1 to the planned development for 75 multifamily affordable housing units. The proposal meets compatibility requirements of policy 1.4, as the character for the area contains a variety of uses. Multifamily residential surrounds the subject site again, so it's fairly consistent with the development pattern found within the area. The proposal supports the intent of policy 1.6 by providing affordable housing options for the elderly. The community design component in the future land use element requires the new developments to recognize existing community and to be designed to relate and be compatible with the predominant character of the surrounding area. In this case, the surrounding land use pattern, again, is mostly public institutional, commercial vacant, and multifamily uses. So this proposed residential use is going to complement that area. The subject site, again, is within the urban general character district, so and review of the policies under that, it does meet that criteria, specifically stating when it's designed for retail, office, row houses, townhomes, and multifamily. So there is consistency with that policy. The site is not within the Brandon Main Street zoning district, which was something that we were looking to see, if maybe it was restricted, but it's not in that, so that's a positive note. There is already an existing sidewalk on Bloomingdale Avenue, and due to the apartment building being behind the existing church, the close setback line requirement for buildings 2 to 5 stories does not apply here, as mentioned by Development Services. Now, overall, the proposed development is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and it is compatible with the surrounding development pattern, as well as it meets the affordable housing density bonus requirements. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, no questions for you, thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, do not hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
No, ma'am.
All right. Applicant, anything further?
I just want to thank you for your time, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Don't have any for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this will close the hearing on rezoning PD 23-0085.
Our next application is item D7, PD 23-0150. The applicant requests to rezone property to planned development. Tim Lamkin with Development Services will provide staff findings after presentation by the applicant. And I will note that for this application, it does have a related comp plan amendment, and both the PD rezoning and the comp plan amendment will be heard at the June 15th BOCC comp plan amendment hearing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Applicant?
Good evening, Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700, representing the applicant Johnson Development and Associates. I have not been sworn, and a couple of members of our team have not been sworn.
Okay, if you and your team members would raise your hands to be sworn. All right. Okay, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do. Thank you.
All right,
and at this
thank
point,
you.
I'm going to turn it over to Todd Pressman, who's going to handle the part of the presentation, and then Mr. Adam Tietz from Johnson Development will also provide a presentation.
All right.
I'm going to X this out. This one too. That's it. Show move. Thank you very much. Good evening, hearing officer, staff. My name is Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg, Florida. This is PD 23-0150. This comes to you with Planning Commission staff finding consistent. They cite 32 objectives, policies, and community plan referrals. Planning Commission was 6-2 in their vote on the issue. DSD supports, and we've had no opposition, 0 public comments on many multiple notifications. The proposed project is a multifamily apartment up to 265 units. Located at the very ends of Hillsborough County outside the orbit of Pluto, literally a stone's throw from the county line. Property appraiser has it at 8.18 acres. You can see the 2 parcels in the PowerPoint here. And you can see the location next door of a large shopping center, Publix, Lowe's, shopping centers across the street and such. This is a conceptual plan, just to give you a rough idea what is proposed on the footprint. And of course, you have the PD plan in the file. Just a little bit of history. The BOCC approved in 2018 RMU 35 for the purple parcel. And as indicated, there's a current companion that the Planning Commission Board found consistent at 6-2. These would be RMU 35, which is a broad range of uses: residential, regional, retail, commercial, office, business parks, light industrial, just a broad band there. Current BOCC entitlements on the one property is a 179 hotel room approval, and on the other is a commercial and office approval for 35,000 square feet. And these are the 2 PD plans that have been approved. Zoning staff notes the intensive uses, Publix, Lowe's, grocery store, and such, just east of the site. They indicate it has a lot of commercial uses, light industrial, and multifamily, and that with mitigation techniques, there is achievement of overall compatibility. And staff indicates they have not had any compatibility issues that they've been able to identify on the surrounding communities. Planning Commission report notes again the pattern. The area is mainly or contains light commercial, light industrial, and residential, and the proposed residential use is compatible. The proposed PD provides housing within walking distance to daily activities, encouraging a mixed-use type environment. Just some quick photos. This is the existing immediate area of residential. This is the residential areas composed to the site. And these are just some photos to give you an idea that it is relatively intense for commercial and multifamily in the immediate area. There is a direct connection to the commercial shopping center next door, which just has a tremendous wide range of commercial businesses for support and across the street, just a wide range from everything Publix to workout facilities, restaurants, and of that nature. So here's the future land use map, which also includes OC20 to the south, which includes residential. But what's very important and interesting is when you look at the existing uses, and this is the mapping from the January 2023 Planning Commission report, where they note under the pink is the light commercial and multifamily. But when you start to look at zoning, you begin to see that there's much more retail and commercial activity in the immediate area, CG, and the commercials that I pointed out. In fact, the most recent approval is a 2022 mini storage, which is a reflection of the demand for residential in the area and residential support. And there's been a lot of conversions to straight commercial immediately to the north, which was originally proposed as industrial area, and now includes karate and restaurants, dog kennel for residential support, and offices. So to change tact here, we did ask J.R. Evans, they are professional civil engineers and certified floodplain managers. We asked them to look at the site very closely. And this includes their, which the report's already in the file, includes their credentials and such. But what they report to is that the site is not located in a FEMA coastal high hazard area. And their executive report, very important, notes again that it falls outside the FEMA coastal high hazard. It is situated in a flood hazard area of A11 and 12, but the first floor elevation of any newly constructed building would be required to be 1 foot above AE 11 and 12. And the building code, of course, has been strengthened and much more improved. And they also note the project's potential residents are not expected to significantly contribute to emergency evacuation or sheltering needs. Municipalities and governments use what's called a slosh model, which is a much more intensive and, as they indicate elsewhere in the report, is an unlikely scenario of any hurricane element. And indicating also in their report, when they refer to Hillsborough County under the FEMA Vulnerability Index map, Hillsborough County is actually considered a relatively low risk to impacts of coastal flooding. And again, stress that this site is not in a FEMA category, as I've indicated to you. And there is, as we've checked with the capacities, there is plenty of capacity in the hurricane shelters. Under the comp plan, there's been a lot of policies and objectives presented to you, but did want to note to you in different areas as well. The comp plan recognizes density along intensities along transit emphasis local service corridors. Hillsborough County carries 58,000 vehicles per day. It has a significant PSTA route. It has a specialized pickup and drop-off. Under the Northwest Hillsborough County study, they also notice the second highest rider frequency in their study, and they look at doubling the frequency along that corridor. And they're also providing new paratransit. So it's a very intensive transportation route, including the Northwest Transit Center. There's also a multimodal facility that runs of a rail line that will run directly behind the site. Oldsmar has that prepared and ready to go at the flea market site, which is just a stone's throw from the site. Northwest Plan notes creation of compact mixed-use neighborhoods, economic vitality. The staff report supports that as well. And when you look at that report, you can see that there's actually some what looks like multifamily at this precise location. So it is a live-work site. The Planning Commission does refer to that and support that, and notes neighborhoods which have activities of daily living should occur within walking distance, walkable neighborhood, which this is. When you pull back, you'll see there's a lot more of that activity. You can see the site at the lower right there in the commercial node, but downtown Oldsmar is a walking distance, and there's tremendous employment in the area from large corporate entities in their corporate park, from Nielsen, United Healthcare, Microlumen, et cetera. Small corporate park as well, and significant commercial in the downtown Oldsmar area. And that's, again, what the Northwest Plan looks at. There is a variation for 10-foot type B buffer versus a 30-foot type C, which is supported by staff. It's the support presented to you in the narrative has to do with the shape of the property, separation from the building because of vehicular areas, ponding and driveways, existing vegetation on the eastern side, and that allows maintaining a compatible structure height. There's a waiver, two-foot setback for every 1 foot building height over 20 feet. Staff supports that as well. The majority of the building meets the 80-foot. Some are at 60 foot. That's, again, based upon the irregular shape of the property and the assemblage of the property. and looking at the balance of site facets, vehicular use areas, stormwater, landscape, and buffering to make that work and work well. That's needed alone. And of course, the density meets the future land use category. I do want to stress that there's been many, many notices. We've never had a single call or letter or email that I recall. I didn't see anything in the record. So in summary, clearly the area has transitioned concerning along as well the BOCC votes and uses and the successful activity. We have all the staff support, multiple notices, no opposition. The RMU allows a wide range of the uses which we meet. There are significant existing entitlements at the sites. There is extreme unique transit and zoning entitlements, which is a directive from the comp plan and the commissioners. There's existing residential in the area, OC20, Northwest Plan. Planning Commission's Northwest Plan calls for proposed use and development. And with that, we appreciate your time and attention.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pressman.
Good evening. For the record, Adam Teets, 4350 West Cypress Street, Tampa 33607, with Johnson Development Associates. Let's see. There we go. All right. As Todd obviously outlined, the property is at 103890 West Hillsborough Avenue in Hillsborough County, just east of the Hillsborough-Pinellas County line. The property consists of two parcels, just a little over 8 acres, and immediately adjacent to a Publix and Lowe's anchored shopping center. Currently on the site, it is vacant except for one highly dilapidated building that has wall sections missing, doors missing, roof missing, and then on the site also has storage of derelict vehicles and other large items. Inside, there is evidence of squatters, as seen with the contents of the building nearly stacked up to the ceiling, which presents some pretty significant health, safety, and fire issues. Additionally, on the site, there are other active homeless encampments. Here you can see their encampment with their remnants left as well. As Todd also previously alluded, this is our site plan. Johnson Development is proposing an $80+ million investment in the community that will have a very significant impact on the immediate vicinity and a very direct and positive impact on both locally owned establishments as well as large national retailers. Johnson Development has a successful history in developing within or adjacent to shopping centers and incorporating multifamily communities into those to reduce vehicle trips, encourage walkability, and the use of alternate modes of transportation. Johnson Development is proposing 265 units, and as indicated by our site plan, it will be designed to be a dense infill 4-story project that is compatible with the surrounding uses and will promote walkability within them. As a part of this project, we will be providing both vehicular and pedestrian access to both the adjacent Lowe's Publix shopping center as well as the out parcel that will eventually be redeveloped into another use into the future. Here's just some conceptual ideas that we've worked with our architect, this being a more contemporary urban infill type design. And then a second one with it being in proximity to the upper Tampa Bay Preserve, wanted to explore a design that potentially plays off of the outdoor lodge type feel. As mentioned, we have developed properties adjacent to and in shopping centers before. This is one up in North Tampa, Trail Hunters Lake off of Bruce B. Downs and east of 275, where we developed 240 units on 8 acres, so about 30 dwelling units to an acre, similar to what we're proposing here, with the Sprouts and the new Hillsborough County new Tampa Performing Arts Center. Here's that performing arts center with our property in the background, so you can get an example of a size, scope, and scale of what we'll be proposing at the site. This is just that property close up. Here's an additional property that we had developed in Miami, 175 units on about 4 acres, built within a Publix and Target anchored shopping center amongst other national retailers, and has done very well there as well. And here is some visuals of that project as well. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the immense need for future housing along the Hillsborough Avenue corridor. As you all know, this is one of the fastest growing areas of the county outside of South County. In 2021, we commissioned a third-party report by the Concord Group to determine the need for new housing in the Town and Country, Carrollwood, and West Chase area. There's a lot of numbers on this slide and a lot of data here, but the main conclusion is that between 2010 and 2020, the area's population grew by 15.4%, and it is projected to grow by another 7% by 2025. So in total, from 2010 to 2025, approximately 23.5 population increase. That projection is likely on the low side, especially if the current migration trends to Hillsborough County continue as they have over the last few years. And in order to provide adequate housing for the new population, an additional 378 multifamily units need to be built per year in order to capture the housing demand for the new residents, or 1,542 in total. I'm wrapping up here really quick.
Thank you.
So the amount of multifamily units delivered over the course of the last several years and projected into 2025 only total 151 units, shortfall of nearly 1,400 units, further demonstrating the need for additional housing in the area. This is just my final slide. It's the same data that was just on that last slide, just in graphic form. And with that, request a formal application, or request kindly your recommendation of approval to BOCC. With that, that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, don't have any for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go to the Planning Commission, to Development Services then.
Good evening, Tim Lampkin, Development Services. The request is to develop an approximately 8.18 acre development consisting of 2 folios. This request for rezoning from planned development, it's PD 08-0425 and PD 03-0672 to planned development to allow for a multifamily development of up to 265 units. There's a companion comprehensive plan amendment to amend the future land use designation from light industrial to mixed use 35. It's proposed for the eastern portion of the subject site. As the applicant showed, it's associated with PD 03-0672, and that will be heard concurrently on June 15th. There's also a PRS that will be heard in July, and that's PRS 23-0374 that's associated with a portion of the PD 08-0425. The portion of the PD 08-0425 subject to the request is currently approved for a 5-story 179-room hotel. The remaining southern portion, which is will remain in the PD, is approved for manufacturing, retail, warehouse uses with a maximum FAR of 0.21. Surrounding uses to the west include a Lowe's, a Publix grocery store, restaurants, financial institution to the east of the subject site, west of the subject site. Additional uses nearby include a variety of commercial uses, light industrial, and multifamily residential. The applicant has proposed mitigation techniques to achieve overall compatibility with the surrounding uses, including a retention pond located along the rear of the proposed multifamily structure, providing an additional buffer located near more intensive uses. The applicant requests a waiver, and that's to LDC Part 6.01.01. It's regarding an additional 2 feet for every a 2-foot setback for every foot of building height above 20, and the applicant proposes a maximum building height of 80 foot, which would require an additional setback. And the applicant provides justification in the narrative and clarifies that while the preponderance of the structure is likely able to meet the 80-foot setback, there are areas where the 80-foot setback would not be feasible given the irregularity of the shape of the subject site. The applicant also requests a variation to the Hillsborough County Land Development Code, Section 6.06.06, landscaping and buffering, which requires, as the applicant showed on their slide, a 20-foot type B buffer along the western and northwestern portion of the subject site, and a 30-foot wide buffer would be required with a type C screening along the remainder of the site. Staff has not identified any compatibility uses relative to the surrounding properties. The proposed use is located in an area including a variety of uses, including industrial, commercial, residential, in proximity, based upon the considerations and subject to approval of Comp Plan Amendment 22-17. Staff finds the request approvable, and that concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Planning Commission?
Carly Yanos with Planning Commission staff. There are a few things to note with this application. This application is currently a concurrent rezoning, so it is tied to a CPA. So the findings that went before the Planning Commission was staff provided an inconsistency finding. And at the Planning Commission hearing, the Planning Commission voted 6-2, as Todd Pressman had stated, for a consistency. So staff then changes their finding to a consistency. And for the purpose of this rezoning, it is solely based upon the approval of that comprehensive plan amendment. So I'll continue on. The site is located in the urban service area. It's within the limits of the Northwest area and Town and Country community plans. There are 2 current future land use designations on the site. It's Regional Mixed Use 35 and Light Industrial. The rezoning request is subject to the approval, again, of 22-17, which is a CPA. It proposes to change 4.56 acres of light industrial designation to Regional Mixed Use 35. This rezoning request is also subject to the approval of PRS 23-0374, which will remove a portion of the property from the existing approved plan development. Now, the Regional Mixed Use 35 does allow for consideration up to 35 dwelling units per the gross acre, a maximum FAR of 2.0. Now, typical uses include residential, regional scale, retail, commercial, office, business park, mixed-use projects at appropriate locations. The subject site is surrounded on the north, east, and west by light industrial category, and office commercial 20 across West Hillsborough Avenue to the south, and the site is mainly surrounded by other light commercial and light industrial uses to the north, east, and west on the north side of West Hillsborough Avenue, as well as some agricultural uses, mobile home parks, and a few single-family developments left to the south. The subject site is entirely in the coastal high hazard area, which Todd Pressman stated the otherwise, but it isn't located in the coastal high hazard area. There are approximately 0.29 acres of wetlands on the site. The applicant, again, is requesting for a multifamily development of 265 units. This proposal, based on the Planning Commission finding for the CPA, as it's going before the Board of County Commissioners, Planning Commission staff is finding this request consistent with the comprehensive plan policies. Now, the subject site has less than 25% wetlands, therefore it is consistent with policy 13.3, which is the for environmental sustainability section. The objective 12.1 and policy 12.1.4 of the community design component, it's consistent with that as well. It discusses how new development shall be compatible with the established character of the surrounding area. The development pattern and the character is mostly contains light commercial, light industrial, some residential uses to the south, therefore it's overall compatible with the surrounding development pattern. The proposed rezoning meets the intent of the Northwest Area Town and Country Community Plans. The proposed PD provides housing within walking distance to daily activities, encouraging a mixed-use type of development. Now, overall, staff finds the proposed residential development is consistent with the policy direction in the urban service area. The proposed plan development would allow for a development that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan, and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anyone here or online, online who wishes to speak in support of this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Is there anyone here or online who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? All right, don't hear anyone. Development Services, anything further?
No, ma'am.
All right. Applicant, anything further?
Tammy Corbett, for the record, just to clarify, Mr. Pressman did not say it was not in the coastal high hazard as determined by the Planning Commission. He just indicated there's a distinction between the FEMA designation and the Planning Commission designation. And I think for purposes of your review, that's not really relevant because we're assuming the comp plan is going to be decided at the same time as this, and the board will ultimately decide that. But with that, I don't have anything further to offer.
All right. Thank you for that. All right, that will close the hearing on rezoning PD 23-0150. And that concludes the zoning hearing master meeting for this evening. Thank you.